that's great.
I was trying for half
Right at
an
the number
hour.
time. So,
That was
huh? Kayj will
He
be
was trying
debating.
for half an hour, he said.
Yeah, you were. I saw
And
that you
they'll
were
be debating
trying
on the
for a
topic
half
of
hour.
moral realism is
Oh
true,
man!
where
But I'm glad that
perfect.
we got you here. I'm glad
Kayj
that
is
you made it.
affirming.
Okay,
So,
great. All right,
Kayj,
son.
we'll give
So
you
we
7
begin our next
minutes.
debate.
We're
It's going to be the
opening, and
Hierophant
we'll set the timer
versus
whenever you say
Timothy
first word.
Norat
Yep.
on the proposition Jesus
All right,
Christ
thanks,
resurrected.
ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be
The
talking about
Hierophant will be
meta-ethics.
taking the
Woo,
affirmative,
moral realism.
and Timothy
Um,
Norat
so
will be taking the
look, if
negation.
I'm going to be using a lot of
And
philosophical terms here,
since we start
obviously,
with the
don't worry, I'm
affirmative,
going to explain it all. So
Hierophant,
lock in.
we
So
begin with your
look, when we're
opener.
talking about
Can I
meta-ethics, what
just
I'm
make
trying
a
to do is
single
offer a
observation?
candidate hypothesis
Okay, go ahead.
that best explains this
This is
moral
kind of
language
funny
talk
because you
that
have
people
theist
seem to
Tim
use all the
versus
time.
atheist Tim.
Now, I submit a
Yeah,
thesis
that is true.
broadly called
Yep.
realism,
Hierophant's
more
name is Tim, so
particularly
it's Tim versus Tim
relaxed
right now.
realism.
Oh,
Now,
cool.
realism broadly is made up
Yeah.
of three constituent
Okay.
thesis. One,
All right then,
that moral
Tim.
judgments are
We're gonna
expressed as
begin your
beliefs.
opener, 7 minute
Two,
opener,
at
and
least
we'll
one
start
of
the
these
timer whenever
beliefs is
you say your
true.
first word.
And three, that
Okay.
the truth of the matter stands
Good evening.
independent. Now,
We are here
those are
tonight to
broadly
ask
vague and
one
will be sort
question.
of secondarily
Did the
shown through these next two
resurrection of
commitments I aim
Jesus
to motivate this
actually happen?
discussion.
My
Firstly,
opponent
that
is not
these
ignorant
normative
of
entities are
Christianity.
irreducibly
He studied at
normative.
a Reformed
Secondly,
seminary.
that
He
these
lived
normative
much of his
entities
life
are
as a
not made
sincere
true by
Christian,
anything. They're truth maker
and
guys.
I
Now, let's
honestly
talk about
respect
that because
that.
that seems to be where people
But
get
this debate
confused.
is not
So,
about Calvinism.
the
It is
general
not
take
about
I
inerrancy.
have is that
And it's not about denominational
truth made
systems.
reality restricted
It's
type
about a
of property
single
here. So I
event
take
at
it
the
that
center of
a
history,
sentence S
the
about the world is
resurrection of
true
Jesus
if
Christ.
there's something about the world
And
which
so
makes
my
it true.
case tonight rests on
Now,
three pillars.
notice here
The
that I
first
didn't
being
say anything
history, the
about
facts
actually being in the
surrounding
world.
Jesus'
So,
death,
what
and
does
the
it mean to
disciples'
actually be in the world?
testimony.
What does it mean to sort
The
of exist
second
like
being
this?
philosophy, the
Well,
logic of
when
God's
I survey the
existence,
landscape of
making the
all objects on
resurrection
offer here,
credible.
trees,
And then third,
anime,
existence, the coherence of
concepts,
Christianity itself,
propositions,
explained only
I
by
don't
the
see them as distinct.
resurrection.
Clearly, a
So
tree
let's
does not
start with
exist in the
history.
same way that
Most
Satoru
scholars, be them
Gojo exists
Christian,
or
atheist, or
concepts
agnostic
exist.
alike,
So
agree on
I
a
need to
core set of
submit a
facts.
thesis for which best
Jesus of
explains
Nazareth
all of these
was
hypotheses to even
crucified
get
and
to this
killed.
sort of truth
His
making talk
disciples
here.
sincerely
So the
believed they
first,
saw
I
him
break this
alive
down into three
afterward,
sort of
and this
candidate
belief ignited a
ideas here.
movement
One, a
that we
real
call
existence. Two,
Christianity.
a non-trivial existence. Three,
Alternative
a
explanations,
non-ontological
they don't
existence. And
hold.
that might seem confusing, but lock in.
Hallucinations
Something
are
really
private and
exists if
subjective,
and only
not
entity
shared
E
in groups
really
across
exists
different
if and only
times and
E is
places.
true, and E is that
Legends
truth
take
maker. Think of
generations to
obvious
develop.
things that exist like a
Yet
tree,
resurrection belief is
or
embedded in the
cars,
earliest Christian
right?
creed within just a
Now,
few
something
years of the
non-trivially
crucifixion.
exists if and only if E
Conspiracy
is
cannot
true
explain
and E
why
is
the
not that
disciples
truth maker,
willingly endured
and there exists
persecution
some X
and
such that
death for
X
this
really
claim.
exists and makes E
The
true.
simplest
Think of Satoru
explanation,
Gojo, right?
the
Gojo is
ones
a
that the
fictional character.
disciples
However,
themselves gave,
there exists a
is the
guy
one that
named
fits the
Gege, Gege,
evidence.
whatever the fuck you
God
call him,
raised
the author
Jesus
of,
from the dead.
Jujutsu Kaisen,
But
fully
history
published
alone
and wrote
isn't enough.
all of the relative
Let's move
manga.
to
Absent that
philosophy.
fact, Satoru Gojo
If God
wouldn't
exists
exist.
as the
All
necessary
right, well,
ground
now
of
we're left with
being,
only this
then the
one queer
resurrection
sort
is
of
not an
entity,
improbable
which is
violation of nature.
propositions
It is
in
the
any type
natural
of
outworking of
any
God's
type.
character. A
Modal,
miracle is
logical,
improbable only
mathematical,
if
moral. So
there
I submit
is
that
no God.
these types of
But
propositions
if God does exist,
non-ontologically exist.
omnipotent,
And that's just to say
omniscient,
that
and
the
life-giving,
E,
then
entity
resurrection
E
is not
really
just
exists
possible,
if and only,
it's
sorry,
expected.
non-ontologically exists if and
And
only
it
if
is where
E
divine necessity
instantiates a
and
type
human
that E
contingency
is, E
intersect in
instantiates
history.
a token that,
And
a
finally,
token of a type that
existence.
E is a part of
Why
is
does
true if it's an empty
Christianity
world. Now,
exist at all? If
what's
Jesus
an empty
stayed
world
dead,
doing here?
there would be
Now,
no Christianity.
if
The
you don't have
disciples
any
would go
concept of
home,
an empty
and
world, I'm
another
just
failed
talking about
Messiah would be
something,
forgotten.
some world that has
But if
nothing in
Jesus
it. You know
rose,
that meme
then
about
history
nothing?
itself
Nothing
is
on that bitch.
reordered
Right? There's
around him.
nothing in there.
That is why
If
the
you need to
resurrection is not
conceptualize
just
it in a way
historical
that's like on
or
paper, take a
philosophical.
square
It is
bracket and
existential.
another square
It
bracket, and
explains
then
the
put an opening
persistence,
closed one.
the power,
All right, so
and the
to lock
hope
in,
of the
furthermore,
Christian faith.
I want to
Now,
say that
my
even in these
opponent
sort
may
of
say, I
worlds
know
here,
all of this.
I want to
I
say
was a
that there exists
believer
some truths,
once,
like
and I respect that
logical truths, like
testimony.
A is true,
But
or
sincerity
mathematical truths, 1 plus 1
and
equals
in
2.
leaving
Modal truths, like
Christianity does not
possibly
erase history.
there exist
It does
unicorns is
not
true.
undo logic.
Now,
It
I
does not
submit that
alter
if
the
you take the
structure of
thesis that
reality.
possibly unicorns exist
Most
is
people leave
true,
Christianity
well,
over
what makes
inerrancy
that something true. Remember,
questions,
lock in. I told you
church
about the
culture,
TMR,
or the
right? The
problem of evil.
truth-made restricted
And
hypothesis,
those
which is just
are
to say that
indeed real
a statement is
issues.
true.
But
A
that is
statement
not
asks
tonight's
about, sorry, a
debate.
sentence asks about the world is
Tonight's
true if there's
debate is
something about
about
the world
one
which asks
event,
true.
the resurrection.
Now,
And the evidence
seemingly,
points
it's
to yes.
incredibly implausible
So
to
let
take
me
the view that
close.
unicorns
The historical
don't
evidence is
exist,
best
right? Because then you'd have to
explained
point
by
out
the
some type of
resurrection.
issue there,
The
which
philosophical
I see
framework
my
of God's
lens will
existence makes
motivate
it
that there
credible,
is none.
and the existential coherence
There's
of
nothing actually in the
Christianity makes it
world like these
enduring.
traditional realists want to note. And
History,
I'm not making an argument for
philosophy,
traditional realism.
existence.
Please keep that in the
The
back of your head.
resurrection is not wishful thinking.
And on these
It is
sort
the
of
event that
about the
grounds
world
faith,
hypotheses,
explains
possibly
history,
unicorns
and
exist is
reveals the
true
God
because
who
it's
is the
talking
source
about
of
how
all
the
being.
world could
Thank
be.
you.
I submit that normative entities are
All
true
right,
because
thank you,
of how the
Tim.
world
So that'll
should
conclude
be.
your
And
opener.
also, I take them that they're also
Now,
a type of
T-Rock will begin
modal
your 7
proposition.
opener,
Normative entities
7-minute opener,
are the type of thing for which
and we'll start your
pertain to
timer
some type of
whenever you say
modality.
your first word.
Okay, well, on this
I
account,
appreciate that, Hierophant.
from
You did a
there, we
great
now
job.
understand that there are these normative
The
entities
question
which
of whether or
aren't
not
made true
Jesus
by anything
resurrected from the
actually in the
dead
world,
is a
right?
historical
But they
question.
exist,
I agree with
and they're
my
a type of
opponent.
irreal thing. You'll hear
But
this
history
distinction
is a
probably
study
brought
of
up a
what
lot
happened in the
as some
past.
type of queer
It's also a
confusion by my
science that
interlocutor,
involves
which generally
probability
has no weight,
rather
because it's
than
really easy.
absolute
Walk in.
certainty.
Something
I can tell
really
you,
is
for
true
example,
if there
with
exists a truth
absolute
maker that's
certainty that
actually in
3
the
plus
world.
4 equals
And
7.
something is eerily
That's how
true
math
if
works.
it's
Math
something
involves
about the world.
certainty.
All right,
History
so
doesn't.
simply put,
I
my
can't tell
interlocutor
you
has a
with
huge
absolute
sort of
certainty
hill to
that
climb here.
Abraham
One,
Lincoln
he
was
has
an
to
American
motivate that any of
president.
these commitments,
There's always
or
that
provide good reasoning to how
possibility
any of these
that
commitments didn't
I
just
could be
click in all
wrong.
your heads right now,
It could,
like you're
for
not
example, be
understanding what I'm
some type
saying.
of elaborate
And
hoax.
secondly, he has to show
However,
that
I
one of
can,
them, at
based
least one of
upon
them,
all the
is
available
false or
evidence for
more
Lincoln,
plausibly
determine
false. And I
that
submit that you
Abraham
won't be able
Lincoln
to do
was
that
probably
without,
an American
doing
president.
some type
The
of
threshold of probability
false view
usually exists
analysis
in the
there. But
middle of the
more to the
spectrum.
point,
So if
this
I can
view,
cross
right,
that
supports the
threshold
idea
of
of
greater
what
than
all
50%
metaphysical theists I
probability,
try to
then I
do,
can
right? This
say
is the
such and
candidate
such
hypothesis,
probably
which
happened.
explains how we understand that these different
Give me
entities
1
exist.
second here.
We understand that it's true that
Also,
Pseudo
if I
Gojo
have a
might be
set
the
of
strongest in the
probabilities and I
cosmos,
compare
but
them, I
we
can
don't think
pick
it's
out the
true in the
most
same way
probable
that
within
the
that
sun
set
exists.
and
It
say
also
that
offers an
this is
account
the best
such that we can
explanation.
understand
For
normativity in a
example,
way that's
suppose we were
irreducible. I
to do
can't
this
appeal
with the
to other types
resurrection.
of
Suppose
properties
I
from which they
compared 2
pertain because they're
possibilities.
true in empty
Number
worlds. There's no
1,
other properties.
Jesus
Um,
resurrected.
and
And
also that
number
their stance
2,
independent, as
Jesus
there's nothing
was
about my
impersonated
stances
after the resurrection.
that make it true. There's
Which
nothing
is
about the
more
actual
probable?
nothing
Well,
in the
clearly,
world for
before
which
we
makes
even
it
examine
true,
any of the
right?
evidence,
Which
we
meets
can
the
say
burden
that
of
number 2
realism.
is far
And I
more
submit that
probable
my
than number
interlocutor now
1.
has a grandiose
Number
task of
1
which he
is
will
an
not fulfill.
extraordinary claim, Jesus resurrected. And number 1 would
Okay.
also require an
Thank you for
extraordinary
your
amount of
opening
evidence
statement,
to
and
prove.
thank you for your
However,
candor.
number
Now
2,
we can move on
Jesus was
to Mark's
impersonated,
opening
is much
statement.
less of an extraordinary claim. The burden of proof is
And you'll
much
get
lower.
7 minutes
Has
on the
anyone
clock,
ever seen
and
an
it'll start
Elvis
whenever you say your
impersonator?
first word.
Well, suppose I went to Vegas and saw someone on the street
I can
dressed
hear
up like Elvis. Give me 1 second here. Without knowing anything about them, which is safer to assume? They are an Elvis impersonator, or they are the real Elvis, risen from the dead? Which of those two is a rational assumption?
I'd like to thank Coco
Well, I
and
think
JR
it's
for hosting
quite
this
safe to
debate.
say that we can
And
assume
I'd also like to thank
that
the judges for taking the
they're
time
an
out of
Elvis
their day to
impersonator.
listen to this debate. It's
And
pretty
notice in this
reassuring to have
example, I
panels
never
that have
mentioned
some intelligent
having an
judges who are
absolute
also
sense of
very handsome
certainty
and
about
very
them
intelligent.
being an
That being
impersonator.
said, let's get into the substance. The SCP defines moral realism as a thesis
And I'm
consisting of
done.
this conjunct. Moral statements are true facts.
Okay, thank you for
Moral
that.
success theory is
That
true, and if moral
concludes
facts are true, they are
the
true independent
openers.
stances, like attitudes
And now the
beliefs.
Hierophant is 5 minutes.
Now, Kayj has to
Rebuttal
affirm all
time,
3 propositions,
or
and I only have to
cross
negate at least one.
examination.
So there's
And
one
we'll
way for
begin your
Kayj to be
timer
correct
whenever you
and
say your
4
first
ways
word.
I can be correct. That means Kayj cannot start the debate by assuming moral statements are true facts, and
So
that
you
someone
mentioned
knows them, unless the second
threshold of
proposition is wrong.
probability,
In
and
this
I'm
debate,
just
I will
stating
be
this
defending the
because you just
discount of all
stated it in
ancient
your
realist
opener.
views, and
You would
to this,
agree
I will be
that
providing
historical
3 arguments
reasoning
as
rarely
supported by
delivers
position.
absolute certainty, correct?
The first argument comes from Sharon
I'm
Street,
sorry, I
who
had a
grounds
little hard time
evolutionary
hearing you.
debunking argument.
Could you repeat
The
that?
argument is as follows.
I said you mentioned a
Premise 1.
threshold
If
of
moral realism
probability.
is reasonable to believe,
And
then our
so you would
evaluative
agree that
judgments have been
historical
shaped in a way
reasoning
that tracks
rarely
stances
delivers
rooted in
absolute
moral
certainty,
facts.
correct?
Premise 2.
Correct.
If evolution is true,
So
then our evaluative
historians
judgments have been
typically
shaped in a way that
evaluate
tracks
what explanation
instincts
best
related to
fits the
survival and
evidence, correct?
reproduction. Premise 3.
Correct.
If our evaluative judgments have been shaped
And
in a way
so
that
our
tracks truth
discussions
related to
about
survival and
which
reproduction,
explanation
then
best
it's not the
fits
case that
evidence
our
surrounding
evaluative
Jesus'
judgments have
death
been
and the
shaped in a way that
disciples'
tracks
claims, yes?
stance-independent moral facts. Premise 4.
The last part, could you repeat that? Something about the disciples?
Yeah, our discussion is about which explanation best fits the evidence surrounding Jesus' death and his disciples' claims.
Strongly shaped the
Right.
content of our evaluative judgments.
I
We need to distinguish two
didn't
things.
quite understand your
Evaluative
point.
facts, which are true.
Well, then my next question is, you suggested that the resurrection is extraordinary and compared it to an impersonator Would you then agree that this implies a coordinated hoax?
Counting in favor of Y.
No, I'm actually not trying to argue that there was an impersonator necessarily, but I'm trying to...
Sure, I reclaim my time.
Either it is the fact that our evaluative judgments are shaped...
You're trying on probability, right? We're comparing two explanations.
On the second horn, Kayj
which would actually infer a coordinated, impossible impersonation versus resurrection claim.
It is unreasonable
right?
to be a moral realist.
So,
on the first horn,
again, reclaiming my time. Isn't it true that the resurrection is the simplest explanation that accounts for all the evidence? Empty tomb, appearances, rapid creep formation, transformation of disciples?
Absolutely not.
Which, if we get to that
it's not.
Debate, I will lay out.
Why would you say it's not?
We can know these moral facts.
Well, because the simplest.
These facts are true or false, and whether these facts.
I don't understand that point. So because something I don't understand even the rationale because something simple that's therefore true or the best.
The argument is
okay, that's fine.
If moral realism is
so using this threshold of probability that you put forward, it seems that resurrection is more probable than impersonation.
People have moral reason
no,
but no motivation.
Absolutely not.
Conclusion: moral realism is false.
Why
accept P1?
Okay, I guess. I don't understand how you're getting there.
They apply regardless.
Well, I used just in my example. I said if you don't know anything about the situation and you see an Elvis impersonator, what do you assume? You assume they're an impersonator.
Yeah, but that's a singular event. We have a creed within 3 to 5 years that admits a multitude of interactions with the resurrected Christ. And so you would have to have a cohort who are pushing this narrative of an impersonator. This makes it incredibly complex. This isn't just the claim of a single individual. This is a claim of a group of individuals.
Moral facts just hang there inert, unable
to... So I'm hard-pressed. I'm hard-pressed to see... I'm sorry, reclaiming my time. I'm hard-pressed to see how this theory of impersonation provides a simpler explanation when indeed it becomes more complex the more you actually look at the state of the claim.
I don't think there's anything complex about an impersonator.
You would have to have a conspiracy supporting the impersonator.
While another is not.
And throughout history, show me one conspiracy that did not fall apart.
According to the rules. But in the game
I don't think it'd have to be a conspiracy. It wouldn't have to necessarily be that elaborate.
So who's the one person who's the supreme voice leading this resurrection claim?
I don't know. All I'm doing is comparing the probability.
I end my time, thank you.
Then it would be acceptable to move my bishop horizontally.
Okay.
It's in the same
that wraps up the first round of cross-examination for Hierophant.
The same can't be said.
Tim, when you say your first word, we'll start your timer.
One moral framework over another.
Okay, so of the 3 points that Hierophant mentioned, the first one was history. And as I said in my opening statement, I think we actually agree on that. We both accept history. But it's a study of probabilities. And I don't know if my... Hierophant, do you accept that history is a study of probabilities, not certainties?
Oh, absolutely. I don't deny that.
We're on the same page on that.
So I've laid out 3
I'm going to skip over the philosophy aspect of it because that's just not something I was prepared to debate. It just takes, metaphysics and all that. I'm just not prepared to get into all that. The coherence of Christianity itself, I do want to talk about that a little bit. Do you own a gospel synopsis, Hierophant?
Sound argument for moralism.
Bible study
I'm excited to hear Kayj defend one. So let's the debate.
The gospel synopsis Bible study? Like study Bible?
Right.
The closest I guess I would say as to that would I have a copy of School's Reformational Study Bible. So I'm assuming that might be your...
Okay, so I'm going to kind of, if you could pause.
Right, so,
I'm just kind of waiting on that. Okay, so...
the semantic question is relevant to meta. It seems like to turn onto
so, like the gospel synopsis takes the 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and it compares them side by side. And if you look at the resurrection accounts, literally
It's
every
not like,
two
that's like a
lines
broad
or so,
question.
you find a
Basically, given
contradiction
evolution,
and
how to shape
inconsistency
our value
and
of
things that are
judgment,
very
pushback,
concerning. I'll give you an example of
truths
something
related
that's
to
Sure,
survival. How would you
inconsistencies are
understand
expected,
that?
though.
well, this is my time. Just
Right.
okay.
But
So,
you
for
understand I'm not
example,
cashing out
with
truth in the way
in
Sharon does,
Matthew,
right?
Matthew says that there were two
Yeah,
women
well,
that
actually,
visited
in
the
your
tomb,
opening, you gave an example, like
Mary Magdalene
mathematical facts,
and
and you said
Mary, the
Sharon
mother of
Street thinks
James.
the dilemma
In
does
Mark,
apply
it
to
says
mathematical
there
facts,
were
except
three
she
women
thinks
that
No,
visited
I'm
tomb:
talking.
Mary
I'm not.
Magdalene,
I gave an account of
Salome,
truth, right? TMR
and
restricted,
uh,
which
yeah,
and
trivially
the
is
other
not how
Mary.
Sharon's
So
using it.
we can harmonize
your review
the
doesn't
Mary
attack the
Magdalene, the other
indisputable
Mary
for truth.
there, but the
That's the
Salome
problem.
is just an
But
added one.
let's just
And
suppose
then
that
on
I
Luke,
grant,
we
that
have
Sharon's
over
argument
5
remotely
women
applies to me. I'll answer the semantic question.
being
So there's, by the
described
way,
there
there's a
in the
bunch of different ways
text.
I can go
And
here.
then
Like,
in
I don't think
John,
it's
there's only
actually
one
entailed by
woman. So
relativist
in
realism.
summary,
Somebody,
Matthew has
like
one
people in
woman,
the
Mark
literature, like
has
Mustafa,
two.
might take an
I'm
intuitionist
sorry,
account.
Matthew
I take a
has 2
conceptual world
women,
semantic
Mark
account.
has 3
So how I
women,
know, like
Luke
your
has
question is, how
5
do I know
plus
that
women, and John
lying,
has 1
like
woman.
normative
It's
entities,
a
like lying is
huge
wrong is true, as opposed to
inconsistency.
you should
We
lie
also
means you're right.
I don't think that's an inconsistency.
Given the
it's my
facts
time.
of
Okay,
evolution
so
shaping
we
our
also
value of
see
judgment,
things in the
not just
resurrection
Right, but
accounts. For example, like in Matthew.
right,
Matthew
but
is
I'm
the
not
only one
committed
of the
to any
4
of that
gospels
type of stuff,
that
meaning
mentions
truth
a great
tracking
earthquake,
you're
a
not
in the
committed.
severe
world.
Are
earthquake.
you committed to evolution?
And why would the other
Well,
3
yeah, but I'm not
gospels fail
committed to
to
truth
mention
in the
a
way that she
severe
wants to say,
earthquake?
right? She
And
wants
we
to say
don't
that
see
I'm committed
anything in
to
history, going
tracking
back to your
things that
first
are
point,
in the
that
world,
has any kind
right?
of
Such that
historical
evolution
record
is something in the
mentioning a
world
severe
should give me
earthquake.
something distinct there. I
This
don't think that's
You guys
I
still
don't
like
going?
understand what this has to do anything if we're
yeah.
arguing the probability of the
Tim,
resurrection.
this is his
Yeah,
time,
that
Tim.
doesn't matter because you can say the same thing with like
this is
modal
his
facts
time
or
too.
mathematical
Okay.
facts. Like Sharon
Your
Street
time.
addresses
Sorry,
this.
his name is Tim
Like she
too.
thinks those types of facts are useful to know
Herifine. This is
for
his time.
survival, and
So
I can
we're eating
explain how
through
if
the
you
time
want.
here,
So it
but
doesn't actually matter.
Yeah,
but I could
I
just go on
actually
and
would. I
on.
want to
Like,
know
was the
how
stone away
any
rolled
type of modal
away when the
semantic
women
is
got
going to
to the
be.
tomb?
We can get to
Like,
the how I
one
know things, but
gospel
I want to
says
see how
it
this
was,
applies
and
because I'm
one
not
gospel
really familiar.
says it was rolled away when
Okay, I
they
mean, if we
got
start with the mathematical facts,
there.
like
It was in the
obviously
it was
two
rolled
lions go in a
away
cave, one
as
lion
they got
walks
there.
Well,
out.
no, let's
So
yeah, sure. Let's start. I
inconsistency
wanted to
there.
start with the modal stuff because that was the actual thing I
I mean,
said in my opening.
where did the disciples
But
meet
yeah, go ahead.
Jesus after the
Yeah, like I
resurrection?
can draw an
One
evolutionary
says
picture where
atop a
clearly
mountain
knowing the mathematical facts is
in
useful for
Galilee.
survival. If
The
two
other
lions
gospels
walk in a
say
cave,
that
one walks out.
one
If we
said they
mistakenly think
met
two
him on the
minus
road
one
to
is zero, we
Emmaus.
might go
One
in the cave
says
and
they
die.
met him inside of
So
a
it's,
home.
or
So which is
leaves,
it?
plants with 3 leaves
These are
are
all
poisonous. Being able to
inconsistencies
count and know
in
the
the
number
text.
3
I
is
mean,
useful for
one
survival.
of them
Sure.
talks
But how
about
does
the
modal?
Roman guards.
How
Like
do
the
modals?
Pharisees came up to them and said, "Hey, I think you should make up the story that you were
If I
sleeping
take
on
those
guard
seriously
duty."
in such a
That
way
makes
that
no
they're
sense at
actually in the
all,
world, like
because
you want to say, how
if
does that?
we all know
That
that a
seems to be good
Roman
evidence to
caught
sort of say,
sleeping on
well,
guard
there's
duty, the
something about
punishment for
math
that would be
particularly
like
that's not true
unalive.
of the type.
So these are not
You cut
coherent
out a ton
Christianity.
there.
I mean,
I'm
this
sorry,
is
I
not
missed some of that.
coherency. This is
I'm saying
inconsistency,
that
wild
clearly, if
inconsistency
I
of
think that it's
stories.
possibly true that
And
this
I mean,
apple is
I
going to
know you didn't
unalive me when I
argue
eat
with
it,
the
and I
text. I
take it
find it
seriously in the
ironic.
way that
Most of my
Sharon does, which
argument
is
is
to say
based
that
on the
it's really
text of the
true,
Bible.
really true,
I'll stop.
then I would not eat the apple and
Okay, that'll
unalive.
conclude your time.
Yeah, well,
Okay,
obviously,
on
being
to the
able to
second
consider
round
different like
of
counterfactuals can be
rebuttals.
useful for survival.
I'm
So you need to be
Hierophant.
cautious. It allows for
We'll start your
like if there's a
timer whenever
bush,
you say your
well, it's
first
possible
word.
there's a lion in there. You know, I might want to
I think it's
consider that
What's meant
interesting
by
when
cautious
making
then?
that you
judgments.
bring up like the
By
number of
cautious, are you
women
referring to
instead of
Carefully
like
consider
asking
some
the
the correct
undesirable
surroundings.
question.
level?
That in first century
Huh?
Judea, why would a woman be
We have like
named
a 5-second lag,
as
by
the
the way, so
first
that
witness
I'm not
of
trying to
all?
interrupt you.
And so being
It's
hung
okay.
up
Like
on whether there
obvious,
was one,
your sort of
two,
objection
five,
was, well,
50
these mathematical
doesn't matter.
facts would be conducive to
The
survival, and
audacity of
these
the claim
mathematical facts are of a
is
type
placing a
where,
woman
if
there
they're
as the
true in the
first
way that I
witness in
want
the
to say,
first
or if they're
place.
true in the way she
That
wants to
is
say,
not
it
expected,
gives reason to doubt my
nor
view.
would it
But
ever
these
be,
modal truths,
especially
if
in
they
the
were
first
true,
century
would
Levant.
also do the
But
same
moving on,
thing,
I do
but
have some
in a way
question
that
for you.
you don't want to say
You
it seems
don't
like it's
deny
clearly
that
it's
if
not
God
true of the
exists,
type, and
resurrection is
I'm just
possible,
trying to
right?
convey here that normative entities as a type are
That's a big
irreducible,
if. So
real, and all that stuff. But
if God
yeah,
exists,
yeah.
then
Okay.
Resurrection is possible.
I'm trying to give you an
Sure,
account of how knowing the
Yeah.
modal facts could help
Yeah,
with
but you'd
survival.
agree that
So we can
denying
continue.
It
God's
does.
existence is a separate
Yeah,
claim
I mean,
from
It
we
what
doesn't in the
Jesus
way that
rose,
math
correct?
does, right?
yeah, we definitely need to be able to
denying God's
consider different
existence.
possibilities, like the line in the bush
I don't deny
example,
God's
right?
existence.
So we can think of things in those terms.
All right, that's fine.
We'll cut it off
Okay.
there.
Moving on. So historically, right,
Okay,
we
so
must
it's
judge the evidence on its own
yeah.
merit.
So
It's
now
not
Mod
by
goes
ruling out
gets
miracles a
5 minutes.
priori. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, sure.
I had a hard time hearing you. I apologize.
So for the evolutionary,
So in the idea of like giving a
the
judgment
dilemma is
of
that
the historicity of
either
the
there
claim,
is a
right?
tracking
We
account
judge
with
the
respect to
evidence
these
on its
facts,
own merits.
these moral facts.
We
or
do
there
not
isn't.
rule out
That's
things
a
like
strict true
miracles
dichotomy,
a
right?
priori.
P or not P.
Would you agree?
Which
but
one?
you're not
No, I
using
don't
my
agree.
account of truth there, which is the
Because
problem.
So
miracles,
That's not
you
what I'm
have to
asking. I'm just
prove
asking
the
which one do you
miracle.
accept?
So when you
No.
claim the miracle,
I can't answer the question if
the
you're not
burden.
So
inserting.
if again,
Like,
reclaiming my
can you
time,
explain the dilemma
if
to me
you
in
assume
the way
miracles
that
can't
you did?
happen, then you've already
Like
decided
we
the
have
outcome before
evaluated
looking at the
judgments that are
evidence,
based on our
right?
faculties that were formed
Okay.
through evolution, right?
I don't know if I'm allowed
No,
to
I
answer or
don't think
not,
they're
but
based on our
I'm not
faculties. No,
assuming
I
that
think they're
miracles didn't
just
happen. What I'm
type
saying
of
is the burden of
like
proof
these
rests upon
terms
the
just play
person making the
inferential
claim to
roles in
prove the
discursive
claim that
practices. That's all
Yeah,
they're
the
sure,
doing. They're
miracle.
not
reclaiming my time,
actually causally
right?
interacting
But
with
in your
things.
counters, your naturalistic explanations,
Okay,
they all have
you
problems
don't
in and of
causally
themselves,
interact
don't they?
with mathematical truths, but you
No,
could still know them
They
because
don't.
they're useful.
well, point a
It's
problem
useful
out.
to
Right,
know
but
them.
that's not
Right?
because of my
Again, you brought up
faculties.
this
I'm not experiencing
impersonator,
one. I'm not
right?
experiencing
And it's
operators of that,
ridiculous to
right? So
believe
that's
that a
why I don't
single
think this applies to
person
me.
meeting an
And correct me
impersonator
if I'm wrong here,
somehow
please, but
convinced,
she wants to say
eventually
that
over
my
2,000 years,
faculties
2
track the truth
billion
as if I'm
people
like
to
some
believe this
input-output
story.
functionalist about
So there would
normability.
have to be, again, sorry, there would
Input
have to
I'm
output
be
not.
some kind
functional.
of
Okay, but okay, let me get
conspiracy
back. This is like a
behind the
strict dichotomy, though,
impersonation,
right?
which
So you could
increases
say
the
you could
Does
level
it
of
say,
apply to me?
complexity and reduces its
it's a
probability.
true dichotomy.
Yeah, but it
Do you
doesn't
agree?
apply to me under the like.
No,
She's
totally
assuming A that
disagree.
It
I'm a
has
like I
to.
use
It's
my
I
P or
don't know
not
how you're
P.
getting there
It's
then.
P or not P.
Okay,
okay,
so
but
you said
okay. Are
it's
you
ridiculous
assuming
to
that I'm
assume
an
an
input-output
impersonator.
functionalist when you talk about
I
my
think it's
faculties
ridiculous
tracking
to
the truth?
assume that a resurrection
Wait,
happened.
define that input-output
Well, if
functionalist.
God exists,
Yeah,
resurrection is
my
not an
belief is
improbable
formed
thing. If
causally
God
in
does
the
not
way that
exist,
A
No, it's
sure.
inspires
not.
my
Told you.
belief. Okay, well
Is
then
that
what's
like
meant by
Right?
that?
causal theory of knowledge or
But
knowledge
moving
theory?
on,
No, it doesn't assume.
right? You know that
Okay, well
Christianity
then what's meant by
exploded out
track
of
the
the
truth
first
with my
century, yes?
faculties there?
To be able to come to
Out
know
of the
them.
first century? No,
Well, how is that
It did
based
not
on my
not
explode
at
faculties?
out of
all.
the first century.
I
Neither the
think that we
fourth
can come to
century.
know things through reason.
I don't know
That's
what
you don't
history you're
have to
looking
come
at,
to
but
know
nevertheless,
everything through
again,
observing the world. But our
and these
foundational
to push my point,
pre-value
right?
judgments were
These
shaped through
first
evolution or
Christians
early
claimed
evolutionary history,
Jesus'
right?
That's
resurrection
begging
as
the
So
question,
centerpiece, not
Ron,
just an
how?
afterthought.
because you're assuming. I take it that the
Is that a
conceptual role
question?
these terms play are
That is a
fixed
question,
by their
right?
their
The
meaning that
resurrection
these
of
terms
Jesus
play are
Christ has
fixed by their
been, from
inferential
the
role.
very
I don't think
beginning, the
that this
centerpiece
like foundational knowledge,
of
whatever that
Christian
means under view, is
theology,
true. Like
correct?
you'd have to motivate that. Why I'd have to accept that?
Possibly. That's debatable.
Wait,
I'd like
say
to
that
see
one more time.
sourcing on that. Moving on.
I
Isn't it
think that the
true that
meanings
this
of
movement grew
yeah
under
should,
persecution
ought,
without
right, wrong,
military
I think they're
power or
fixed
political
by the
backing?
inferential role that they play. I don't think that it's
So
Okay,
a
let me
part of
ask you
because if
whatever
this.
type
something
of
grew
faculty.
In
under
a possible world
persecution,
where
Yes or
that's
no, please? Is it
humans
true
didn't
that the
develop
movement grew
language,
under
is raping
persecution
children wrong?
without military power or
Yes.
political
Well,
backing?
wait.
Okay,
Not
not
how?
raping
true.
children. Well, yeah, raping
Now
children is wrong
that's
because it's a
false, unfortunately.
non-ontological truth. Yeah, I agree with that.
Agree.
If the
How?
Well, it
disciples,
might be a
moving
mixed
on,
normative
had
truth. I
knowingly
want to say that
fabricated the
categories like
resurrection through
lying
this
is wrong is true
impersonation
because if I say
that you're
raping
putting
children,
forth,
then I'm
aside
committed to
from the
children
complexity of
really
conspiracy,
existing,
what did they
which
gain?
I don't think
Wealth,
that's true of
power,
my view. I want to
status?
say
Did they
that it's an
gain
empty
anything?
world. You're fine with the empty world stuff, right? Like that's I don't have to talk
I'm
about
not
that.
positing an
I'll
empty
take your
world.
silence. That's fine.
Oh, just some empty
Instead,
world with
right?
stuff in
They
it.
faced prisons,
No, I said
beatings,
in a possible world where
unalivement,
there's
didn't
people, we
they?
just haven't developed language.
Yes, I do agree with
Oh,
that.
would
Is it
raping
Right.
wrong
wrong?
So
children
doesn't
too?
that suggest
Is raping
sincerity
children still wrong?
at the minimum,
Yeah, of course.
and
How I
something
know it
real
is
driving
indexed to
them
the
at a
conceptual
maximum?
role these
I
terms
agree
play.
with
What
you
if
there.
Of
does
course, that's the
anything
Yeah, that's
metaphor.
That's
time.
the
hold
end of
on?
my time.
Does anything explain
Okay,
the fact
thank
that it's
you.
wrong
So
in that
move on
world?
to the third and final
If by explain, do you
cross-examination.
mean is the normative entity reducible?
So,
No.
No, sorry, no, not third. There's a second
I just mean some account
cross-examination
of
with Tim.
why it's not
Go ahead,
false.
Tim.
Like why is it true
I
rather than
get it.
false?
Yeah. That's my
So
understanding. The conceptual world
you're
stuff I'm
saying
talking about.
that,
That's how I know it.
and I'm
That's what
trying to
explains it.
take
What
notes,
explains
but
why
it's
you should
hard to
lie or
listen to
why you
you and
shouldn't
take
lie
notes. I
is
have a
because of
hard
the
time, and
reasons
I
that
had a
act
little bit of hard time
against
hearing you.
lying.
I apologize. Um,
Like that's what that tool is picking out there. That's the
So
whole point.
you started out with one
medicine
point about the women witnesses. So
okay.
how
So what explains why
is
it's
it
true is because it's
that
a reason not to do it.
No, not
you're
not
saying
what
that
explains why it's true.
because
What explains
women
how
were
I know that this
included
is true. Like,
in
if
the
you say what explains
as
why
the
it's
first witnesses,
I'm not like
that
really
is just
asking an epistemic question
just
right now.
like
asking
This is the epistemic
hardcore
argument.
evidence that
Yeah,
a
I
resurrection
know, but in my
exists.
hypothetical,
I
that
have a
was
hard
not.
time believing
I wasn't asking how you
I mean,
know
I
it's true
hate
in
to
that world.
admit
I'm
this,
just
but from
asking
a
if there's an
historical
explanation for
perspective,
why it's true
women
rather than
were
false in
unimportant.
that world.
that
I don't
women
know.
were
If you're
not
not-
considered
well, then,
credible
if you're not asking
witnesses.
how I know it
But
in
if you
terms
were
of
writing a
explanation,
story,
well,
you
I'm
can
not
write a
really
story
sure. I'm
about
kind of
whatever you
agnostic
want.
on
It
their
can defy social
modal
norms,
status. I want to say,
etc.
well, I'm
So
not
I don't
agnostic. I
find that
might
to
say
be
they're
a strong
necessary, that
point.
they're true,
Um,
right? But what
Now
explains why they're
you said
necessary, I'm
it's
not really sure.
ridiculous to
Okay, yeah,
assume
we're gonna have to
an
stop right there.
impersonator
We're now gonna move into the second round of
is the
cross-examination.
best
Kayj, you're gonna
explanation.
get 5
Now,
minutes.
I'm not
It
saying
starts whenever you
that
say
I
your first
believe,
word.
I want to be real clear,
Right.
I'm
So
not saying that I
I
believe the
kind of want to get to the
impersonator.
heart of this because we talked
I'm also
before,
not saying
and
that
you
it's
told
the
me you have
best
a
theory.
concept of SIRs,
All
but
I am saying
you're
is
not
that it
really
is
sure what's
far
being.
better than
Okay,
the
well, when
resurrection
I like the
explanation.
metasemantics for my view is
And
CRS, right?
it
Part of
makes
it
a
talks
lot
about
more
it,
sense.
all
And it's
that
a
stuff.
lot more
Which,
plausible.
by
It's
the
a
way,
lot
isn't
more
entailed from
rational.
relaxed
And
realism. It
it
could be the case,
fits
an intuitionist like
reality.
Evan,
As we have
or
observed reality.
anybody like that.
We
But
can't really
they get
observe
that. I
someone
think that how I know
scientifically
lying is wrong
rising
is
from the
true, as
dead.
opposed to
And
you should lie being
and
true
I
is because
mean,
of the
people talk
inferential role that
about
the
empty
concept plays.
tombs and
Discursive
things like that.
processes,
You can go over
which
to
is just to say that
Israel
there exists,
today and
excuse me,
visit the three
a set
different
of reasons
empty
that count in
tombs
favor
of
of the view.
Jesus
Now,
that they
do you
claim
know
are Jesus. I
like
mean,
what I'm
Israel's
talking about when I'm picking out that set of
basically a
reasons? Is
fancy
that a metaphor?
tourist trap, like with a lot of
What you're picking
crazy
out, not
relics over
exactly.
there where they make
Also, wait, I just
all
want
kinds
you
of
know, Harfit thinks like Sharon Street's
extraordinary
argument is
claims
one of the best
about
ones against his view, right?
fake history.
Yeah, and I share that. I just think the way you're presenting it is
So,
horrible. But look, the
and
point
then
is
your
that
last point,
on
you were
this
talking
view,
about
you have
how
a concept of SIRs,
Christianity
right?
grew
Like,
under persecution
like you
without
honest. Okay,
military
so we can like
power.
run some like
I
CIG or
think that
companions again here. Like,
Christianity,
No, I don't. Do
and
you
I
have an
could be
argument for
wrong on this point,
categorical
you might
reasoning?
actually
yeah,
have me on
I'm
this
about to
point,
say
but
like companions
Do
of guilt.
you
Look,
have a formal
to my
argument?
knowledge,
I'll give it.
Christianity was not
you
like
want me to give? I'm not going to give it
exploding
formally. I don't have it formalized,
in
but it's
directly
pretty well
after
known.
the
So
time like
maybe
that
I'll just
Jesus
like you're
died.
fine if I give a parody of it.
It kind of
Yeah,
simmered.
it's your call.
It
Okay,
did
well,
grow some,
take
but
it to
I
be the
don't think
case
it
that
just blew
you're arguing
the
with a flat
doors
earther,
off
and this flat
for
earther
the
has a set of
first
reasons that which count in favor
until
of their
about
belief.
300
Phi, where
something
phi
during
is flat
Constantine,
earth.
when Constantine
This is
actually
the reasons
made
are constitutively made up of
Christianity
stance-dependent
the
ones, right?
state
Like their
religion of
attitudes and
Rome,
preferences,
and
and also
that is
empirical ones,
what
like maybe
juiced
some
up
observations that were done in some
Christianity and made
scientific
it
domain.
into
Well, suppose it that you, a
one of
rational,
the
otherwise
largest
person,
religions of
presents
all
them
time,
with
if
the
not
relevant
the largest
defeaters,
religion of all
right, for
time.
their empirical
I
facts, and
mean,
they're only left with their stance-dependent
and you
facts
said it's
after
without
you present
military
them all
power,
the
like
evidence, right,
so.
in
My
favor
argument
of,
with that is was
the
Rome
Earth
not
being
without military
round,
power?
and they say to
But
you,
I
well,
guess
I
we have
still
a
know that
different
it's flat.
perspective
Do
on
you
that
take it they're
point.
doing it
You're
something
welcome to respond
epistemically
to
wrong
that. I've got
there?
a little bit of time left.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
within the first
Right,
century
but why would
of the
that be the
growth of
case if what you mean by
Christianity, to
wrong
which,
picks out a
like,
set of
in
reasons, and
reality,
what
even if
you
you look at
think
Paul,
constitutively
Paul
makes
is a
up all the
man
reasons are stance
who
dependent?
was so offended
And this sort
by
of
this
view,
growing
Like,
movement
well, you're asking,
counter
okay,
to
like if
rabbinic
I want to take the
Judaism that he
subjectivist
traveled
route in
from
response to
modern
this,
Turkey
you're asking me if I
to
think it's wrong,
Jerusalem
and I could take like a
to
pretty
arrest
relative response
Christians.
to this. So like,
This
index
is this
to
is
the
not
person
some
being asked
like
the question:
localized
Are they
thing.
doing something
Paul
epistemically
himself
wrong?
was
Yeah, there doesn't claim
not
to be like a
from Jerusalem.
stance-independent wrongness there.
He was from Tarsus.
well, you're okay. How does
So,
a
and we
appraisal
see
relativist
this in
view
his letters to Corinth,
make this
dated
prediction
as
not just accommodated?
early
How is it
as
predicted
the
under that
50s,
hypothesis?
where we first are given the
What's the
Corinthian
fact
Creed.
being predicted
So
that
this
there's a
isn't
wrongness there?
something
Yeah, that
that
there's
is
something
small.
wrong
This is
going
something that
on
is
when somebody
transforming
denies
Oh,
stance
Chime in here?
like
independent
nation
reasons and
states.
only goes
Can I
on with
chime in
their
here?
own.
So, but Paul never
well,
witnessed the
because it's part of my
resurrection.
preferences that
Wait,
I'm
We're
let me
talking.
not
let me
able
pause the
to
time real quick so
reason
you can
No,
understand.
meaningfully
I
Tim,
about.
this
know
is
it's
your
part of your
time. You do
preferences,
whatever
right?
you
That's
want with
trivial.
your
I'm
time.
asking,
But
You could
I
what
always
just
speak for
about
me.
it being a
most of
part
the
of your
time.
preferences
Paul
makes it
didn't ever
expected
witness
that
the
this thing is wrong?
resurrection. In fact, he never actually met Jesus. He had a
But
vision
that's
of Jesus on
Right.
the road to
what
Damascus.
wrongness under like this
And it was
crazy
affirmed when he
relativist
met
view.
with Peter
Like
and
wrongness would
James
be a violation of your
3 years later
like
and was
your
given the creed.
preferences, like upon like
Of
reflective
what now?
preferences.
And then within
Right, but
12 to
how?
15
So are
years,
preferences
repeated the creed
compositional?
in his first letter to the Corinthians.
Like
But
some
it's just
type
a
of,
creed, man.
you
It's
know,
just
just gonna
something
try
they
and
came
run
up
this,
with
mythically
to
This
given
is
stuff,
a
but did
statement
somebody
of
like were these
belief.
like were these these values of
Yes, it is. I
yours
agree.
that that
But
But
it's
this
just
is the
appraisal
center
given
point
to you?
of the entire faith.
Were they
If
given
it's
to them?
false, it falls
Yeah,
apart.
like, is there any like
debatable.
reduction of
That's
the
debatable.
reduction of values? Is there some
Okay,
type of terminal
and
value there?
that concludes the second round of the rebuttals. All right,
Like
on to the third rounds
I'm
of the
sure there's not like
rebuttals.
an infinite regress.
Tim,
If
we'll
that's what
start
you're
your
asking.
timer whenever you say
Okay,
your first
well,
word.
And
Me?
if they're
I
just given
would
to
like
you,
to
and
I'm
there's
sorry,
no
it's
yeah,
a
clear
so,
Hierophant.
explanation
I'm
as to
sorry.
why
You guys are
it's
Hierophant,
both.
I don't
just
know. I'm
You guys are
sorry.
both
dominated under your
Tim.
I've
You guys are
never
both
hypothesis
gone
Tim.
by
that
Tim,
it's
so call me wrong.
coincidentally the case
Rock.
that
Okay, I'll call you
you
Rock,
think
and I'll
that
call
this
him
person's doing
Hierophant.
something wrong. On
I'll
my
make sure
view,
not
it's
to say Tim.
expected that all
All right,
types
go ahead,
of
Hierophant.
sort of ongoing here
So
are
my
wrong.
opponent, as you can see, and I actually
Right,
agree
so
on a
I'm not
couple
seeing how your
points.
hypothesis is doing any sort of explanatory
Jesus
work there.
existed.
But
He was crucified.
moving on,
His
you're
disciples sincerely believe he
my two sort of
rose.
commitments here.
The
You're just
disagreement is
normativity
over
and
what
truth making
best
gaps. Right, those are
explains
the
those
things you're committed
facts.
to.
I
Particularly,
argue the resurrection
do
is the
you have
most
any
coherent
specific issues with
explanation
either
when judged
one? Like we'll talk
historically,
about
Well,
philosophically, and
any issues
existentially.
with it.
On history, the
yeah, well, I don't see
naturalistic theories
a sound
collapsed under
argument from.
scrutiny. Again,
You didn't hear my opening?
hallucinations. Psychologists agree
You
group
didn't have any
hallucinations are
formally
possible.
valid arguments
No
on your opening.
appearances to individuals and
Oh,
groups.
you want me to
Skeptics like Paul and
formalize it?
James.
Well, I said the
Statements
word
like there were
sound.
over 500 at once. No
And
parallel
with that,
exists.
we have to call it. Mob,
Conspiracy,
it's now
which
going to be
goes
your
into the
turn. You're going to get
impersonation
5 minutes
thing.
for your
The
cross-examination.
disciples gained
Start
no
whenever I say your
wealth
first word.
and no power in the first
Yeah, okay. I
century
mean,
of the church's growth. Only
I guess
persecution and death.
we can go on
And
to
guess what? Liars
motivation
make bad
question.
martyrs.
So why?
We could
Francis,
try
why are
to
you
go
not a
with the
robust
legend,
realist?
but the
Like, do
earliest
you have
creed in
problems with
First
that view, or do
Corinthians
you think that they're
is
like
dated to within
Yeah.
3 to 5 years of the
weird?
crucifixion. And legends say
No, they're not
generations,
contradictory.
not
I just think
months.
that the types of arguments
So even
against
skeptical
that those
scholars
views
admit that the
towards
disciples had real
QA and
experiences they believed
COP's
of the risen
objections,
Jesus.
particularly to
The
various
question
accounts
is,
of
what
existence
explains
under
them?
those various views are compelling to
My
me.
opponent
Which
wants
is
to
why
give
relaxed
some
realism is a thing, or
possible
non-cognitive realism
explanation,
is a thing.
but that's
Okay,
not
so
really a historical
so you agree there
argument.
are
It's just a
none of those
philosophical
metaphysical
presupposition.
entities that are
Because if
not
God
reasonable.
exists,
Okay,
resurrection is
like if you were to
possible.
find out
To say it's
natural,
not
Well, I don't think
to
there's
say it's
no,
impossible is
and
not
moreover, I think
evidence;
they
it's
non-ontologically
bias.
exist, right? I
History
think they
demands we
exist, they're
look
just
at the
not
evidence
real.
first and then ask what best explains it.
okay, like if you were to
Naturalistic
find out
theories break
naturalism is
down. The
true,
resurrection
there's
uniquely
none of these other
explains things like the empty
metaphysical entities,
tomb,
you'd still
the
think grape
transformation of the
is bad
disciples
is
from
true
fishermen
because you're
fearful for
actually
their
sure.
lives into men who are willing to go
Yeah.
into death
Well, am
to
I
proclaim
naturalist? Like,
this.
are you asking me if
And the
naturalism is
rise of
true would prove me wrong?
Christianity. Dismissing it simply because it
Huh?
involves God or
Are you
some
asking
other
me if
thing
naturalism
is
is true
stacking
and
the
I'm no
deck,
longer a
deciding
relaxed
the
realist and
outcome
prove
even
wrong?
before hearing the evidence.
No,
And that's
just
not
the first part. If
skepticism,
you
that's
find out naturalism
dogmatism.
is true.
And finally,
Could they be
existence, the
wrong?
resurrection is
Yeah.
not about
Possibly, yeah.
just
Of
ancient
course.
data. It's
Plausibly?
about world-shaping reality.
Well, yeah, I've heard some
Christianity
people make
erupted from
arguments
a
against it, but
defeated, scattered band
yeah,
of
I'm fine with
peasants
saying yes, of course.
into one of the most
Go ahead.
transformative
Yeah, okay,
moments
cool.
in history,
So
all
let's
centered on
say
one
there's a possible
single
world.
claim.
You find out
He is
there's a
risen.
proposition baby torture is
Billions
good.
today
Okay?
testify to
Stands independently
encountering the
good.
risen Christ,
Would
and
you
the
do it?
transformation is existentially undeniable. A
Would I do
movement
it?
this massive
Yeah.
doesn't just spring from
No, probably not. No,
hallucination,
I'm not motivated
myth,
to.
or fraud. It points to
Yeah,
something
But you'd call me
real,
wrong for doing so,
something
right?
true, and something living.
Yeah, but I don't need to do that in a
So we're left with this. The history points to something
way. But
extraordinary.
why wouldn't you do
The
it? If that's
philosophy
what's
says we
good.
can't rule it out unless we're already closed-minded.
Well, it's not.
And the existence of the church
If
shows
what
the
you mean by
power of
good
that
is
reality
what you
still at
only have
work.
reason for, presumably
The
I have
resurrection is not just the
attitudes
best
for it as well,
explanation.
but take it
It's
that
the
those
only
attitudes
explanation that does
are
justice to all three.
impotent, right? The reason why I'm motivated is because
Exceed
of my
my time.
desires. That doesn't mean I can't be wrong, right? A
All right,
rapist is
that will
motivated by his
conclude
desires more than reason.
the
We
third
still call
round
him
for
wrong.
Hierophant. Now,
Yeah.
T-Rock,
Okay, so
you get 5 minutes
you actually
of
agree
rebuttal. This
that
is your last
the kind
rebuttal
of like
time,
the stance
and
these
you
stands
begin whenever you say
independent
your first
facts,
word.
which ones are true, which ones are
Yeah,
false,
you ended on
based on
something that kind
hypothetical
of
doesn't
shocked me. So
really
you said
matter
it was
to how
like
you act,
the
and
only
they're not motivating
explanation.
at all.
I think
Correct?
that's
I
maybe
didn't
the most
say that.
ridiculous
I
thing
actually
that
said the
you've
exact
actually
opposite
said
just
this
now.
whole debate.
No, you
Like
just said you
it's
wouldn't
not the only
torture babies if you found out
explanation.
it was true.
It's
Yeah, and if I
like
had stance
it's
independent
one of the
reason
worst.
too,
I don't know if
and
it's
I
the
acted in
worst
line with my
explanation, but
motivations,
it's one of the
supposedly
worst
I'd be doing
explanations
something
that
wrong.
has
The
the
same way
least
that
amount of
I
evidence.
had attitudes
And we do
towards
agree
doing it and
that
had
you
reasons
follow
against
the
it, I'd be
evidence
wrong.
wherever it leads. I think
I'm
we
not
could be on the
asking
same
if you do
page on
something
that
wrong.
point.
I'm asking,
But
would you do it or
you
would you be
mentioned
motivated to?
hallucinations. I mean, that's not
I
my
already answered
argument.
that.
Actually, I never
Yeah, and you
mentioned
said no,
hallucinations.
right?
So that's kind of a
I would
straw
not be
man, and I was kind
motivated
of
to do it.
surprised that
No.
you went
Yeah, okay, and I think
to that.
I think that's actually a problem.
You
that
know,
your view has.
myth
It doesn't
and
explain
legend have to develop over
actually
time.
how we
Well,
engage in moral
how
language.
long did it take?
They're clearly
you know,
not
Stan Lee to
motivating.
write Marvel comic
They're
books.
clearly
I
these
mean,
facts are clearly not motivating you to
write
act.
stories
And
in
those are
a
two
shorter,
things,
much
you know,
shorter
according to the
period
SCP
of
that
time,
the
and you can
meta-ethical
also
Wait, let's
harmonize
just get
those
clear here.
stories
You think I'm
and
not
edit
offering a
them
better
and things like
semantic
that
thesis
over
by
a
how
much
people use
shorter
moral
length of time. You
language?
don't need
You think I
hundreds of
haven't offered
years
that
to
yet?
do that.
I
It's
think
not
you're offering one
one
that doesn't
thing
work.
that I'll just throw out a possible
you can't
explanation
say I
for
have an
the
offer. You
resurrection.
just said offer one, right? That's
Maybe it's just a
lying.
No, I
literary
never said you
invention
didn't offer one. I said it doesn't
to
explain the facts it
align with
purports to
some
explain
things,
well.
fulfill
And the counter
prophecies of
example.
the Old Testament or something like that, like
No, it
to
doesn't.
create this
You don't even.
Messiah
Mind if I give you an
and
intuition
to
level?
lend
No, you can do that on your
credence
cross. You don't even do it.
to
You don't even do
Jesus's
that. You don't even
messiahship or
engage in the
something.
language
I
that
don't
way
know.
because I just asked you if it
You
was
know,
stance
you
independently
said
true
in your
that
last
you ought grape
report
children.
that the
Would you do? You're
disciples
like, no, and I wouldn't even be
experienced
motivated to.
the disciples
So
experienced
just to be
it.
clear,
Okay,
you're
quick
stipulating
question,
that
yes
there
or
are
no?
stance-independent reasons
Were the
that you don't have a
Gospels
concept
written
of,
by
by the way,
eyewitnesses
for
that Matthew,
a
Mark, Luke, and
action
John?
that is intuitively
We don't know.
wrong.
You said earlier I have a concept of them.
Oh,
You
yeah, we
literally
do
said
know.
you
They
told
were
me you had a
not
concept
written
of
by
them.
eyewitnesses.
Right, but you never.
And,
He said that
So
I
you,
don't
so you,
know
so you do have a
anybody who's a
concept of them,
scholar
but
that's making
Wait,
the
so I
am I
do?
allowed
argument
to
that
ask
they
you a
were
question? What's
indeed
the next
written
question?
by
I do and I
eyewitnesses.
don't have a
And
concept
I'll
of
give you
them.
an example. And
What's the next
also,
question?
like
Is that
a
what you're
lot of
saying?
people who are
Okay. Well,
listeners,
yeah, I'm just trying to point
you
out. I
know,
only
they
got 10
think, who
seconds
wrote
left, so I'm just
Matthew,
gonna
Mark,
say
Luke,
I'm
and
just trying
John?
to
And a
point
lot of
out. I
people
don't think
think
Kayj
Matthew,
even
Mark, Luke,
uses
and
the
John.
language that
But those are
he
church attributions.
purports he does.
So we
And
actually
his
don't know
theory
who
fails
wrote
to
Matthew,
explain.
Mark, Luke, and John,
Okay,
but we
sorry.
do know
Time
a
is up.
few things about it.
Okay,
We
so it's
know
the
that Mark
last
was
cross now.
probably the
Yeah,
oldest one,
right. We're moving on to the third and
and
last
that John was the
final
youngest one.
cross-examination.
And,
Kayj, you get 5
you know,
minutes,
Bart
and we'll
Ehrman
start
makes a
whenever you
great
see the first
argument
word.
about,
Right, so
I
Modest
might go a
charged
little bit
me,
off
which
the
I think is
topic,
funny,
but
with
Jesus being
my
God,
metaphysical
like
view
John
not
is the
offering
one
the
that leans
metasemantic
the
thesis,
most
which
into
is
that
relatively
theology that
trivial. I
Jesus
don't
was
think a
God.
subjectivist
And,
explains how they know their
but,
terminal
you know,
values or their terminal
the
values.
Bibles
But
have undergone a
moving
lot of
forth,
revision and editing over the
obviously how people
years.
use the
And I
moral
think a
language
lot of
may not
people aren't
always be in favor
aware of
of their
those type of
motivations.
things. And,
Obviously, here's an intuition that I
I
think a
mean,
lot of
it
us on
took the
TikTok can accept.
resurrection.
If you're
I mean, you could
somebody who
have some
struggles with
historical
MDS,
facts
or
about
MDD,
Jesus
major depressive
buried
disorder,
into the
you might be lying in your
Gospels.
bed
You
without the
know, like
desire
for
or any
example,
attitudes for which
maybe
that
the
you want to
Sermon
get
on
up
the
in the
Mount
morning.
actually
That might actually
happened.
have attitudes heavily in favor
Maybe
against that
Jesus,
thing. Um,
being a carpenter's son,
However, you still
actually
know, and
was the
people still use the
case.
language that I should get up. I know
Maybe
I should get
Jesus
up.
was born in
If that
Bethlehem. We
doesn't
don't know. Some of
make
these
sense of how
facts
people use the
about
language, let
Jesus
me take a classic
are
existential
plausible.
dad in his
They're
30s.
really not.
That I
They're
should
not
work
that really
out,
that
I
far
should
fetched, and
treat
you
my
won't
kids
actually
better, so
find
on and so forth.
scholars.
But
I mean, they'll debate them somewhat,
Bob,
but
do you
not
think
as
you
much
use the
as the
language that way
resurrection,
when
because the
you charge
resurrection
people
is
epistemically
a
with
pretty hard
being
thing
wrong in their formation of their
to
beliefs?
replicate. You can't do
Do I
it,
use the
and
language the same way the
you
dad
can't
does? Is that what you're saying? Is that what
observe
you're asking?
someone being
Now, my question:
resurrected.
when you
I
charge
don't even
somebody
know
with being
how that would, from
epistemically
a
wrong in virtue
scientific
of
point,
this stance-dependent
happen with the
reasons,
cells in your
you
body.
understand
Like once
they're not
they've
motivated
undergone
by your
death,
charge or the fact that
like
there are SIRs to
unaliveness.
change their
Like
view,
how
right?
do they just come back to life from a
Not
biological
intrinsically.
standpoint and a physics
Right,
standpoint?
but what follows from
You
that,
know,
right? You
one
want to.
of the things
What
that
follows from
I
that
do is
is you
magic.
call
I
them
do
wrong. You
coin
say what they did
vanishes
is
and things
wrong. It
like
doesn't
that. And it's
dispel the
a
idea
lot
that
more
that's not how
likely
we use
that
moral
it
language.
was
It just
some type of
dispels or promotes
magic
the
trick.
evidence
If
that
if
can be
if
wrong.
it's not a literary, that it would be
And
more
wrong
likely that it would
decisively, right?
just be
But
elaborate
I'm curious.
magic trick. I mean, there is
You actually
evidence
haven't
that
said anything
Jesus
about
did
truth makers.
perform
Do you take it
magic
that
in
truth
the
maker
Bible.
gaps are a valid concept?
For
Do you have any
example,
issues?
turning the water into wine. That's
No. Can
something,
you motivate it?
you know, I could do with a pack of Kool-Aid.
Right. I mean,
You
your
know,
standard is formal
and
arguments.
maybe a little bit of vodka. You
So
know,
truth making gaps.
I don't know if it's safe to say that,
You don't have to.
but I mean,
Okay, well, you remember my
you know,
thing of
I
truth,
mean,
right? My
there's
TMR, the
plenty of other
truth-based
explanations
reality
other than
restricted
Jesus was
hypothesis.
resurrected that are completely
let me see.
rational
So
and
there's like real.
completely more
We'll
likely
just
than
move forward.
the
Whatever, it's fine.
resurrection.
On the truth-making
Yeah,
restricted
Jesus had a
hypothesis, I'm
pack of
assuming you wrote
Kool-Aid.
it down, so
Gotcha.
just read that. Do you agree that that
I didn't
hypothesis,
say
that candidate, best
And
explains
that's
how we
time.
use a bunch of types of languages, modal,
And now we
logical?
go to our closers.
I think
Hierophant,
that's actually
you get
pretty
3
contentious.
minutes.
There's a lot of philosophers
What's
that are
that time?
realists. They
First word?
think, possible worlds are concrete.
Tonight we
They
have
think possible worlds
examined
are
one
abstract. They're
question.
fictionalists about it. There's even Kaysian
Did
metaphysics.
Jesus
Are you
rise
familiar with the
from the dead?
Kaysian metaphysics?
We agree
Are
on
you
some
willing to motivate
historical
any of
facts.
those?
Yeah.
Jesus existed.
Go ahead.
He was crucified.
Okay. Well,
His
hold on.
disciples
Let me
sincerely
first
believed
note
he
that
appeared alive after his
I'm
death.
kind of running these
The
possible
question
other
is and
explanations
remains what
as
best
undercutting
explains these
defeaters.
facts.
For you to actually say
My
there's
opponent has
this
framed the
theory that your truth
resurrection
number
as
theory is correct,
extraordinary,
you're gonna have to like
suggesting
disprove these ones. It's not
some
my job to
impersonation or some
prove it.
other
Okay, but if you're
conspiratory
asking me to,
Oh, it
method,
is your job.
most
I
probably.
offered you an account.
But I
You're
want you to
saying it's
think
wrong in virtue of these.
carefully.
Prove
no,
those.
I'm saying I'm not. I'm saying I'm not
Impersonation or anything else
Oh, you're just saying you're
would
not convinced. Okay,
require
well, what about
hundreds
my
of
view
people
on
coordinating
truth making about
fraud,
reality? Like, you
producing
agree
hundreds
possibly
of
unicorns
witnesses,
exist as a true
and
bonus
then,
statement, right?
after all of that, be willing to
I
give
would
their
say
lives for this lie?
Okay, well then, what makes
I'm
that
sorry,
statement
but
true?
that is far less plausible than the resurrection itself.
Well,
Remember our three
it could
pillars.
be,
History.
like I already gave you.
Early
No,
creeds
I'm not
within
here
years
what
of the
makes it true. I'm not asking
crucifixion.
what it could be.
As much as I don't like to mention it, the
why is the
empty
statement true? Or
tomb,
more
even the
aptly
Jewish
put,
polemic
what doesn't make it true?
presupposes that Jesus was indeed
I gave you
crucified
tons of
and was
accounts
buried.
before. Those all can account
Yeah,
for.
can you
Eyewitness
repeat
appearances,
yours?
all documented by
Yours.
multiple
Oh, I'm
sources,
agnostic.
even though
Okay, so you're
the
agnostic
authorship
about
of those texts are
whether or not
attested.
there's a truth
There would be
maker from
no
modal
actual
truths. But you agree that
motivation
it's true,
under
and this
the
candidate
historical
hypothesis
methodology they
explains it and
use, but
accounts for
nevertheless.
the intuitions and how people use the language.
Be it any
explains modal
naturalistic
deliberation.
explanation.
Between
It wasn't a straw man, it was just pointing towards
modal realists
your
and
naturalistic
anti-realists. It also
explanations,
explains, by the way,
hallucinations,
how
legends, or
mathematical
conspiracies
anti-realists use the
cannot
language, which
explain the totality of
you
these
are.
facts.
Is that true? You're an anti-realist about math?
Philosophy, our second
Who told you
pillar,
that?
means that probability does not
Can I
require
get a yes or
certainty.
no?
We both agree on this.
Sorry, can you define
Using the
mathematical
threshold of
anti-realism?
probability,
Is it
my
just there
opponent
are no
cited
view that
resurrection
math
is
not real
indeed
entities, and
the best
facts don't
explanation
real,
for
are
all
they?
the historical
They don't really
data.
exist.
It accounts for the evidence where
I'm
naturalistic
agnostic.
explanations fail.
Okay, so you're
And
agnostic
then
about
third,
that.
existence, the transformation of the disciples,
Whatever. It seems
the
like you're
birth of the
agnostic about everything, but
Christian
I guess that's your
movement,
burden in
and
this
the
debate.
ongoing impact
Okay,
of
well,
Christ's
let's skip
resurrection
truth-making
across
gaps. Do
2
you think
millennia
anything's wrong about
show
your
that
existing
something
longevity?
real and world-changing occurred. Fraud,
Okay, you can answer
hallucination,
that,
or
and
myth,
then we'll move on to
regardless,
your
cannot
thoughts
account
after
for
that.
this. So we're left with a clear
Okay.
conclusion. The resurrection is not only
Wait,
historically
I'm not.
plausible,
I'm
it
gonna go on to
is
like my questions.
philosophically
Okay, that's
reasonable
fine.
and
Real
existentially
quick.
transformative. It's the best explanation for the
When
facts.
you say
The resurrection is not a
goodness,
story we
like
wish were
what does the term
true.
like goodness mean?
It's an event that history, reason, and
Yeah, so I've told you
reality
3 times
point
now.
to.
Goodness,
Jesus
strength,
Christ
rightness,
rose
wrongness,
from the
badness,
dead,
all of these are just
and that
conceptual
changes
tools we
everything.
use in role of making inferential
Thank you.
judgments and moral deliberations. That's all they do. That's how they
That
have
is
their meaning.
time. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, and Rock, you get
How do you bridge
your
the
3
gap
minutes
between
whenever you say your first
gastronomic
word.
realism and moral realism? Can't I make the exact same account for a gastronomic realism?
Rock, you're muted. Hold on.
Like I just mirror
You could
what
unmute.
you're doing
I
with
invited
moral
you.
realism. Oh my god, this guy's
There you
shining
go.
his lights right
All
at me.
right.
So
The
annoying.
last line.
Sorry, go on.
Oops, I'm getting an echo.
Sorry, it's probably
you asked?
me.
What was the question?
Like, can't I
The
just
last
use your,
line
like,
of
kind
my
of
opponent's
functionalistic and
argument
make the
was
exact same
Jesus Christ
point with
rose from the
gastronomic
dead, and
realism
that
be like, yeah,
changes
gastronomic
everything.
realism
Well,
is
guess
true.
what? That's an assertion. And
There are
the way
stance-independent
burden of
reasons
proof
for,
works,
you know,
the
tacos
person
being
who
better than
makes
ice
the
cream.
assertion has the burden
And
of
can't I just
proof
give the
to
exact same
prove
account?
the
What's
assertion.
the symmetry?
I want to be crystal
or
clear.
would you say that's
I'm
plausible?
not claiming that I know what
No, I wouldn't
happened
say that.
with
The
any
way I've
sense of
structured it is
certainty.
plausible. Because when you say, I like eating tacos,
That's like the God of the
or
Gaps
tacos are
fallacy.
better than ice cream, you're actually ontologically
But
committed.
to claim that I know something when I the God of the Gaps fallacy.
No, like if I were to say you
But
ought
to
eat
claim that
tacos
I
over ice
know
cream.
something when I don't know
Is
something,
you an
that's a God of the
indexical
Gaps.
that commits you to a subject existing?
So when you say you ought not rape children, is you an
Conspiracy
indexical
world
that
is
commits you
a
Well, that's a
miracle
mixed.
with
So I
no
actually told you this
good,
to be the
solid
second time.
evidence to
I think
back
that's
it
a
up,
mixed normative truth.
and
I committed
philosophically
to normative
reasonable,
truths. I remember
or
my
rational,
definition
I
of
would add.
non-ontologically existent. Entity E exists
So
even only if
one thing I
instantiates a
really like to
token
talk
of the type
about
that E
with a
pertains
lot
to
of people
is true in an
is,
empty world.
you know,
That's why I have that definition.
what is
as opposed to
rationality? Like if I
entity
say
E non-ontologically
that I
exists
have
only if and only if E
a
is true in an
pink
empty world. That's the
unicorn in my
whole
hand,
point as to why I
and that
didn't
pink
say that.
unicorn
So
grants
no,
me
to answer your question.
wishes whenever I
eat
want.
tacos over ice cream,
Do you?
that's a mixed
Is it
statement as
rational to believe
It's a
that,
mixed normative
or
truth,
is
which I
it
would
the
not think
default?
applies structurally to my argument. For the third time
Like,
now, because I don't.
is it rational to
For the
believe
second
that I
time,
have
I'll
a
tell you
pink
because of my
unicorn in my
Jungian
hand
semantics, where
that
I
grants me
fight
wishes?
with. Okay,
No,
this
it's
would
not.
work, Mob, and I'll be
Now,
real.
what if I
This
started
would
giving
work
you
if I
more and
defined,
more and more and more
normative
evidence to
entities
prove that?
that
Then,
are
what if
non-ontologically
I
existent,
actually
where what I
had
mean
a
is
pink unicorn in my
entity E is
hand?
true in some empty
Then
world,
I might
that'd
actually
be fine.
be able to
But the
provide you
reason why I
a
define it as I
sufficient
do is
amount
to
of
get
evidence to
away
prove
from
that.
those
But
types of
because
commitments
there
and
is
those
no
types
pink
of statements.
unicorn,
It's
and I sort of
why
just made that up,
that's literally
it's kind of
the
like
whole
the
thing about it.
resurrection. There is a
Evan wrote a
lack
paper on it.
of
I'll link to you
evidence
after.
to support this extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims
always require an
I
extraordinary
only have 2 minutes. I
amount
really
of
want to get
evidence
back to the
to prove. And the
evolutionary
burden
debunking
of proof
argument. I
always
guess
rests
this
upon
is
the
the last 2
person
minutes in
making
the
the
debate, or
assertion.
wait, is there another?
So,
This is the last 2 minutes, right?
what is the default? If you don't know
So
what
I guess let me
something
ask you this:
is,
do you
the
successfully
default
think
is
you've answered
always
the
the
evolutionary debunking
rational
argument?
default in light of
If
insufficient
what you mean
evidence
is, did I
is
not answer it
always
because it assumes
unbelief.
things that beg the question against
I
my
end my
view? No.
time.
Did you not answer it? No.
No, I didn't.
I'm done.
I did
It
answer
begs
it.
the question against my view.
Um,
And you didn't provide a response to why it begs the question.
Gotta end. I'm trying to end.
yeah, because I mean, it's a true. The question I asked you was a true dichotomy. It doesn't really matter about.
Yeah, I'm done.
Assumed. It's a true dichotomy. It's either.
Do you guys hear me? Am I not heard?
Do you think there's a third option?
I can hear you.
You guys hear
I don't
me?
think the way
Okay,
the
great.
meaning of the words, right? The
No, because
conceptual
for a
role
second I
that
thought you guys couldn't hear
designated
me.
by the
Okay, great.
conjunction or by the disjunction
All right,
there
great.
are actually
All right.
picking
Just
up
making
my
sure,
view. I think it's a
because
better
people aren't
argument
okay.
against
Okay, it's good.
non-realist cognitivism
All right,
generally.
so,
not my
yeah,
view.
that concludes the debate, and now the judges
do you remember
are going to give the
fear and
critiques.
I asked you?
Starting with Flinster now. I guess
No.
it's Flinster's turn.
Okay, then how can you say it doesn't?
Okay, yeah, this is a
report,
really good
or it's
debate. I
begging the
really
question.
appreciate
How do you say it?
I said
everything that y'all brought to the
because
table.
I asked
Y'all
you.
both
I remember
have
telling you, "Hey, look,
a
the
good
way she
amount of
uses truth here
historical
is
knowledge
in a way that really
and,
exists, such that in the
awareness of the
same way that
arguments
evolution
for
really
and
exists,
against.
I
So
don't
I
cash
definitely want
those
to thank
two
y'all
out
for bringing
in the
that.
same way. Right? That's
Yeah,
not me
but
saying
I
think
evolution
told you.
doesn't exist,
Hierophant's
by the
opening
way.
was
That's me
really
saying
quite good.
evolution doesn't.
Went
Sorry,
through kind of
evolution
the
really
known
exists,
facts
and normative entities
that
don't
historians
really
can
exist.
agree on.
No, well, I
About
responded
how
by
naturalistic
saying,
explanations
Sharon
fail.
Street's her argument doesn't need to commit to a particular
The existence of
theory of
Christianity
truth.
being
And actually, people
evidence in
that
and of itself,
like relaxed realists do actually
for the
think
fact
this
of the
is
resurrection,
a big
and then
problem.
made the
They
general
have responded to
abductive
the
case.
argument.
That resurrection best explains all of
So
these disparate
I
facts,
don't
especially
think you
given
quite
his
understand
claim that the naturalistic ones
the
fail.
Who's a relaxed realist or not a like?
Tim,
Because I think non-realist
T-Rock,
cognitivists have relaxed realists.
I thought it was good. You both kind of agreed on that it was
Now
a
we're going to go
historical
into
question of
your
probability
final
and not
statements or
certainty, and
concluding
you kind of
statements.
reiterated
So,
that, gave the Lincoln
Kayj, you're going to get
example.
3 minutes, and it starts whenever you
Said
say your
that to
first
believe
word.
something, you need to move kind of
All
across
right, boys and girls,
this
it's over.
threshold,
Finally,
right?
holy
This
shit, my
one
stress is
half,
done. Look, lock
or
in.
whatever it was that you said
I
exactly.
delivered sort of my entirety of
What's
my
needed is to
view.
compare varying
Bob
hypotheses
seemingly has
and to see
intuitions
which
that
one is more
agree with
probable.
the first three
So I
part
think
of
y'all
my
were
thesis, right? He
really
has
quite
cognitivism,
similar
right? He has not error
on the
theory,
strength of the
and it
opening.
even seems like he
I
has
think I'd have to
stance
give
independence or a
it to
concept of it at
Hierophant.
least, which
I thought
I mean, he didn't
he was just a
sort
little
of
more
argue against that, which seems to think
clear
that
in his
realism
strategy of
broadly
how he wanted to go
might
and
be amenable
establish the
to him, but
resurrection.
more
When we moved to
particularly
the
the thesis I aim to defend is
cross-examination,
relaxed realism. Now, notice I didn't say
that was a
non-realist
little
cognitivism,
frustrating
but
for me.
I asked
I
him
think
during the
Hierophant,
debate
you would
about
ask a
truth-making
question
gaps.
and
He
then
seemed to be
didn't really allow
agnostic on
Tim
everything, which
to answer it.
you know, I take it that you
I
actually
felt
have
you
to have some
reclaimed your
foothold
time
if you're going to
kind of
levy an objection
before
against a
we
view
got to hear the
after I've
answer, so it
motivated
seemed
it,
more like
right? Obviously, if I haven't motivated it,
a
then
rhetorical
you can
question
espouse something with no evidence.
at
But
best.
then we talked, and you know, it
And
was
then
relatively
for
unsatisfactory. He doesn't
Tim's
have an account of
cross,
truth-making.
I thought
Seems
that
to not
was
understand how I
good.
dispel the
It
general
was a good
intuition that the
initial
folk typically want to say they
cross-examination. I
had,
thought
where a
y'all went
sentence S is
really
true
well back and
if and only,
forth
or a sentence S
throughout
that's in the, or
the
commenting about what's in the
totality
world
of
is
your
true. There's
crosses.
something that's in the world
I
that's true.
think there were very
And I
few
distinguish that from there's
issues that
something,
were brought up
sentence S
that
is
weren't
true,
picked up,
a
that
sentence
weren't
that's about the world is
addressed.
true if there's something about the world that's true,
Women
which
being reliable
explains the confusion on
witnesses,
Sharon's account.
the historicity of
I do
whether
agree that
Christianity
her
grew
argument broadly
explosively
is,
from the
you
first
know,
century on.
interesting to the
I
non-realist
think those are
cognitivist, but I don't think
good
applies
debates,
to this specific
good
view of
things to
relaxed
hash
realism.
out in the debate, and you all
The one
did.
that I run anyways, with the
And I
whole
think for
truth tracking thing
closings for both
that
of
he couldn't
y'all,
explain.
for
Then we
Hierophant,
talked about irreducible
did a good
normativity.
job of
Right, he asked me to motivate
reiterating
it and
all
asked
the
for a
points that
formal
you wanted to
argument, but I
make.
think I gave some
I thought
extensive
the one
irreducible
point that
normativity
I
when
felt
I gave
wasn't
the
nailed, or
type
I
of
don't even know that it was
truth-making
really
account that I
brought
did where they
up,
don't exist,
was
right? I
moving
can't appeal to
from
non-natural
something being
mental,
possible to
non-natural
something
entities
being
or
probable.
natural
So
entities.
you said, like,
It's
if
an empty
God
world for which he agreed
exists, then
to.
miracles are
Which seems to
possible. I never really heard a strong
he
case
agrees
for
that these things
why
can exist in an
that
empty world,
made
they
it
need to be
probable.
irreducible.
I did recognize that you
But yeah, look, it was a
said,
fun
well,
debate.
this
The
is going to
other two
explain
objections,
the
right, one didn't
totality
even follow. The last
of
one
the
he was
evidences
levying against
that
me
we see
about
better than these other various
the
naturalistic
relative types
hypotheses.
of
So,
how I
and
know
then
these
Tim's
things, it
close,
seemed like he wasn't either
I
A,
think also
listening or B,
reiterated
locked the fuck in,
very
like I
well the
said.
core thesis,
I
which
offered
was
an account of
extraordinary
metasemantics, which is
claims
not
require
the relaxed
extraordinary
being stuff,
evidence.
right? I could
I
have
think you
adopted
finally,
intuitionist
at some point
semantics,
late
and
in
it
the
would have been a
debate,
very different debate.
finally said, "Hey, look,
So
I'm
Mott's
not
burden
making a
was to establish
claim
relaxed realism as
that
false. It
Jesus
seems
was
like
the
he wants to
resurrection story came
grant it
from
and say,
some
well,
imposter
let's
story."
assume this thing is true
Right?
and
And I think
levy other
for
objections
the
that
majority of the
unfortunately all
debate,
fail,
it
which
sounded
leave the
like
fact that
that was
relaxed
what
realism
your
is true.
favorite hypothesis
He also
was.
didn't meet the
So it's
burden that
good
I
to
set
see,
out in
like
the
you were
first
saying,
place. It
it's
seems
just
like
an
he granted
example,
most of it
perhaps literary
outside of the
invention
irreducible
that
normativity
does all of that.
and being agnostic on the truth-making
That was
gaps
great
whilst
bringing
having
up
those
like the.
intuitions that they're
I
true.
thought a point that
So
you
it
could have
seems
driven
like
home better would be
you
like
should grant them. But
at
anyways,
several
that's the end of the
instances you were
debate. Mob, I
questioning the
thank you for your time.
reliability of the
Judges,
Gospels.
hosts, know what it is.
I thought you could have done a better job
All
of
right,
tying
that'll
that
conclude the
into
debate.
why that should make us doubt this
Oh no,
core
wait, no,
central
I think
claim
Mob gets it close.
that it
Sorry,
seems
Mob gives it close.
they
gets it
do
close, and
converge
then we'll
upon.
conclude. Yeah.
So I think that was kind of a missed opportunity.
Okay.
There. So I think
Can
those
I
are,
respond
That
to
was
that
definitely a
real
fun
quick?
debate.
well, we'll get into that.
The past 2
Okay.
weeks I've debated
afterwards.
metaphysics.
So,
I learned a lot
so
about it.
I
It's
think
definitely
I
been
think it was a
really
really close
fun and
debate. I think I will have
And
to
the
give it
Kayj,
to
you're very smart
Hierophant
guy. That was
on
fun.
this one.
But as for the
So
debate,
go ahead.
Kayj
Thank you,
didn't
fun sir.
give any formal arguments, which
That's
I mean,
really hard for me
this
to
is a
watch all the time.
debate. You know, this isn't like a random TikTok live. You shoot
Right.
crap with
Either
premises and
Mitch or
inferences
Friction
ready
next.
to, you know, defend your conclusion, your premises that lead to your conclusion. But he didn't give any. The closest he got was the companions and guilt one,
very similar to
which
to
I
Fancer.
believe I answered.
I think you did a good job
And
at
also, I
highlighting
believe with the hypotheticals about Randy
the
and
arguments you were
baby
going to lay
torture
out.
in the possible worlds.
The historical
I
argument,
kind of showed how
the
he doesn't
philosophical
even really
logical argument, and then
use the
the
language he
existence
purports to
argument.
use.
I think you
his
did a good
meta-ethical
job
view.
at
And
in
I
the
kind of showed how it doesn't explain how
cross-examinations,
we generally use the language.
making sure that you were
And I
going
kind of
through
showed
all of the
how these
naturalistic
standard kind of
explanations
reasons
of
aren't
the resurrection
motivating in any relevant
and
sense
kind of
that a metaphysical theory
systematically
would need to
kind of debunking
explain.
them. I do
And
think at
for
some
the
points,
evolutionary debunking argument,
you know, you covered
I
maybe
don't
too
think he
broad
answered.
a
I think
base. It
like
seemed
he
like
was kind of getting close to
pre-prepared
like a
almost because
quasi-realist way out,
T-Rock
which
had
I
only
don't
mentioned by
consider
this point, I think, the
a realist
impersonation
view, obviously.
hypothesis,
So that
but
wouldn't
you went to
answer the
like
problem. But
a bunch of others.
yeah, Sharon Street's
Don't think that's
argument
necessarily a
definitely
negative,
does
but it
apply
did seem
to
a little pre-prepared. So,
relaxed realists.
and then yeah, in the closing,
Yeah, it was
I think
definitely a very
Hierophant,
interesting
you
debate.
yeah, you did really well
Sorry,
to
I'm trying to think
reiterate
of
all
other
your
things.
points. So yeah, you scored
I
pretty
can't think of anything else to
highly,
touch
and
on.
then
It was fun
for
though.
T-Rock,
So I'm just gonna add my
yeah,
closing.
opening really good. You
And with that, that's the
you know,
conclusion
you
of the
gave
debate. Thank you guys.
you
Dude,
gave a clear
Mob,
like
somebody
concession
told I can
where okay,
finally
you
tell you
agree on
this.
the
Tuesday,
history, but
somebody told me
does
that
that
you're
actually,
contracting
you know,
with
this is a
Cain for
probabilistic
hours on my
claim?
demise.
Does it raise the probability above a certain
It was
threshold?
not.
And then
It
you
was
set
not
that
hours. It
threshold.
was like 30 minutes.
In the
Maybe.
cross-examinations, you seem to flip-flop
But I
between
did talk. I did
positions.
talk to
It wasn't
Kayj.
clear what you were defending.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of started with the
With that,
impersonation
we're gonna do
hypothesis, but then said,
questions, comments, concerns,
you know,
and
that wasn't
critiques.
actually
And
you know, your only hypothesis. And then
Dude, you
at the
took
very
Evan away. I was
last
like, dude, I can't wait
cross-examination,
to
you kind of brought
actually
him to
finally get
a
to
bunch
flesh
of
out
other
my view in a
hypotheses,
formal
which
way.
I
I've
thought
been
was
meaning to do
pretty
it for
late in the
months.
game
And then
to
you were like, oh yeah,
construct.
we'll get Evan to judge.
In
And I
terms
was
of
like,
like an
yeah, you did that on
argument
purpose.
that
Fuck
should have
you.
been done earlier, perhaps, and then supported.
Yeah, you're not
But
getting any
then
help from Evan. Get
in the
out.
closing, I think you did a good job
Yeah.
of reiterating
Noe,
your first
what you got
point,
for
which
us?
was kind of the Hitchens razor
Hey,
extraordinary
how are you?
claims
So,
require extraordinary evidence, which was your
so
central
if
thesis.
we're talking
So yeah, I give
about
it to Hierophant
evolution, are
overall.
we like atheists here, or no?
Wait,
No,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
actually, ironically, it's. I think.
So yeah,
I'm
Friction's next.
I'm honestly
Good.
asking, like, you know,
Yes,
the
can you hear me?
host, for example,
Wait,
is he an
Yeah, go ahead.
atheist
Sorry.
or?
my
Yeah.
guy.
Get him
I'm just
out!
gonna say, yeah, I
Great
thought
start, great start.
Hierophant's basic structure to his opening
Yeah, my guy. This
was
is questions,
pretty
comments,
good.
concerns, or critiques about
Not
the
full
I
disclosure,
don't know what
this
was that
actually
about. This is a better ethical debate,
all right.
not about theism. Or about
Basically,
me.
sort of.
Why is Detroit? Why is there two Detroiters?
Yeah, question for Kayj. How did it feel getting skull fucked by Mob and knowledge gaps? You got your
I'm having a hard time
You looked
hearing
so
you,
bad
man.
in that debate.
So let me put my device on it.
That was Clark.
Is this any better?
Dude, I haven't seen Clark for
Yeah.
ages. Where did he go?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, he's
So
well, my
yeah, so that
mom
was
blocked him, so.
decent, and then
Because he's toxic. He literally
the
just said skull fucking.
Well,
with
Dude, I'm more
Timothy's response in
scared
terms
of
of
what
the
Evan's about to say than like
just comparing the likelihood of this
losing
versus
this fucking
the
debate,
example
bro.
of
He voted for you in the side things.
Yeah, but he's just biased because I quoted like.
That's not necessarily. I was just trying to see what the vote was.
Impersonator, yeah.
You see.
Just
so you
that
know.
seemed
Just
all
so
right.
you know.
I feel like the point could have been fleshed out a bit better, but it seemed fine to me.
Okay, all right. So judges, I mean,
but
you guys ready?
overall, I think it seemed to me that
I will
throughout
go.
the
I'll
discussion,
go last.
especially in the
I'll go
rebuttals,
last. I have a lot to say.
No.
Her fans' points
That's
were largely unaddressed.
That's scary, man.
And so I'd give to Winston overall.
Friction.
I could say more, but I'll just leave it there. Somebody else go first.
Okay, yeah.
Good debate, T-Rock. I enjoyed the debate.
Oof, I
appreciate it. And this is my first solo formal debate, so
it's all good,
What the
man.
hell was my thing? Hello? Okay.
So that was for Hierophant, right?
Damn.
So there's three. Okay, great. So Hierophant, congratulations. Congrats to both of you guys. You guys both did very well.
Or is it by poll?
On the debate. This is as honest as I could give it.
Sorry?
I think
Sorry?
it's really good.
It's not the judges that are deciding it.
But
I'm asking, is it the judges that are deciding, or is it by poll?
They're both rhetorical. I almost gave it to Mob.
No, the
Mob
judges
calls me
decide.
handsome and intelligent,
Oh, I thought you were
but
polling
that
in
would be a
addition
little
to
bit,
this. Okay.
That would be a little bit wrong.
No.
Well, then I'm
polling
going to
is
change it
tied.
then. No, I'm kidding.
Round one, I gave the Kayj just because I do see the evolutionary debunking argument as being the type of
now
thing,
we have time for
which is question betting
it's
on his
not
position, given how he laid out the eerily
Sorry?
true
Oh.
is what moral facts would be contained in. So if you're saying what real thing
we have questions
motivates
for,
your reasons to believe this,
we're gonna try
that
to
isn't going to
So Mark,
necessarily
you're saying
fall
that
in line with
you're
what
gonna go to work in an hour?
classified these sorts of truths as. So I
Look
gave
at
round
11
one to Kayj
PM
because he was
Eastern.
right. It is
So,
question begging
1
on
hour
his position, at least
and
how I understood
33
his
minutes.
position.
Man,
Round two, I gave to Mob.
yeah,
This
'cause I
one
mean,
was
like,
close.
you're
I just
supposed
thought
to
Mob was
debate.
rhetorically better.
So-
Yeah, I know.
Same sort of
let me
substances
just
given
ask
in this
Kayj
round, but this was like the round I believe where there
who's
was like
Logic
in
Troll,
some
right?
possible
You
world
stupid
where
bitch!
this
You
is
made me wait already an hour, and now you're
would you
fuck
still do it? And Kayj says, "Well, I have no reason to do it, so no."
Alright,
However,
so
I
it
do
seems
also
as though,
want to bring
Mark,
up that at
if
an
you
earlier
can't
point in the
make
debate,
it,
Kayj did
to your
say that
debate,
these
we're
could
gonna-
be
Go ahead,
necessary
fuck it,
facts,
go ahead.
so
I'm
that
just-
also could
for
be
future
another type of
reference,
question
whatever
begging
you
on
tell
Kayj's
me a
position.
time,
I
I'm
don't
adding
think
3
Kayj
hours.
ever justified that though. So
No,
I mean, I guess
Kayj,
you're
you
kind
think
of
that was my?
justified
You
in that
think
sort of
that I had?
questioning.
You think it was my
Round
fault?
three,
Like,
I gave to Mob. I thought that it was stronger on his position.
I thought
Although
it
I
was
did think
my
that
fault.
rhetorically he
At
was
10.
weaker.
So that's my
His
bad.
substance that he laid out near the end was better. So I did give
also,
it to him
I-
just because like, he did motivate that like these sorts of stance independent
What is
truths
it?
might not exist.
Sorry?
To
And then the
answer somebody's
conclusion I
answer
gave
set,
to
I
Kayj
didn't
because Mob didn't
push
really have a conclusion. And
my
I
positive
Piece of shit,
metaphysical
you know that?
necessity.
I overall said Kayj.
But
No,
it
fuck you.
is
Choose
like
one.
if the
I said
necessary being
Kayj is
exists,
who I'm
and
deciding with just
necessary
because
enters
your rhetoric over the debate,
contingency,
in my opinion, was stronger than
necessary
Mob's.
cannot maintain necessity if it
And I do agree with
subsumes
your
itself
substance.
to contingency. So it can't reach a terminality. So the resurrection
Okay.
would be the only like plausible explanation because the necessity can't
rather strange, but
terminate itself in
that really influenced my judgment about that much.
it wouldn't be necessary.
So, commenting.
Well, now we're
Jeffrey
like,
Truth, you have a question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Discussed.
Oh, sorry. If I can just like head off the Q&A
Evolutionary debunking
bit.
arguments. I would have thought there would be some sort
So,
of response along the lines of, what if you're
T-Rock?
taking conceptual role?
Yeah, Hierophant's logical claim was something like God existing would raise the probability of a resurrection, right? But that's to say that like some other belief that you don't have would raise the probability of the thesis in this debate. So I would have loved to have seen you push back against that. Like it's basically he begged the question in his logical claim.
God existing would raise the probability, but it doesn't. You don't have evidence, so.
Would have loved to have seen you
That's
like
the
push that out
problem,
in the debate because I thought that was a really like weak logical
You
point.
still lack evidence. You have a major lack of evidence going on. So. I'm kind of. Can I just say something real quick? I'm a little disappointed in myself a little bit. I think I had a little bit too much focus on the impersonator theory. I only wanted to use that as an example, but I think I gave people the impression that that was my go-to thing. And I really don't have a go-to thing. I just don't believe, I don't exactly have a position. I just don't believe the position that the resurrection occurred. So I don't have the burden of proof to prove a position. I don't have a burden of proof to prove the impersonator theory or to prove all these things. And I know they were saying he was debunking everything, but I don't think he was debunking everything. I mean, he was trying to dismiss those things, but there's still a better explanation than resurrection, even if they're not a good explanation.
Regardless of yeah, I think you could have pressed harder on what's the prior probability of
and another thing I forgot to mention that was kind of one of my golden or my silver bullets, and I totally forgot to mention it, but there's so many mentions in the Bible itself of the disciples not recognizing Jesus, and I totally forgot to mention that point. There's 5 or 6 examples of them. And,
they're pretty close.
And I totally forgot to mention that point. And that's, I regret that. But I mentioned it now, so, and I really don't care I don't care about winning and losing debates.
My counter to that, my counter to that, T-Rock, would be that they wouldn't have expected it to begin with.
All right, let's try to move it along. So, Jeff for Truth, do you have any questions?
I think it's just more of a comment. So I understood that debate a lot better. Since it's
I wrote it just for you, Jeff, for Truth.
Yeah, down my alley. And T-Rock, I understood the judge's responses to the debate. You have the correct position that Jesus did not resurrect from the dead, but you didn't argue it very well. And so I want to encourage you to watch my debate next Friday, or come watch my channel, or come join my live. And because Hierophant is making all sorts of claims that are not even corroborated by the evidence. He's saying it's a factual statement that the creed of 1 Corinthians 15:3 was dated to the 30s. That is an absolute baseless claim with no support whatsoever. In fact, no letter of Paul can be has any reliable evidence to date to the first century. The first time 1 Corinthians ever shows up in history is in
conceptual role semantics. Literally zero clue what you mention.
Do you have a question?
It was just a comment and encouragement for T-Rock.
I'll say this, Jeff. I did think about what you said about simplicity, and I'm like, I bet Jeff will like mine a little bit better because I talk and I don't use as many big words because one of my backgrounds is elementary ed, so I have to kind of lower the the vocabulary. I have a lower level of vocabulary. I'm just being honest, and I'm also a custodian. I'm not like a professional. I clean toilets for a living. I have a minor in Bible, but I did study Bible. I actually have a little bit more than a minor, but technically speaking, I just have a minor in Bible.
You gave 3 arguments.
I'm going up against somebody that I'm dead, going on their doctorate,
I'll call in if I have to.
Let's move.
You didn't really go for the.
You're calling late.
Can I say one thing though, too, real quick?
I have no clue why.
I thought you did a great job in terms of the professionalism.
You didn't go hard on it.
Like you did a really professional level presentation.
You just
I thought you did really good.
The problem of
and listen, I do want to say, this is something Mitch Fletcher picked up on. Don't blame yourself for the impersonating.
Going to the first
I made that more thing in my argument.
Went over the EDA. There's a lot of stuff here.
I made it.
I
kept
the
pushing
first
it on
thing
purpose.
is.
Oh, okay, cool.
It is a.
That's pretty cool. All right, cool.
Call that sophistry.
Just because you take conceptual role semantics.
I didn't know what you were doing. I didn't realize you were.
Now I get what you were doing, Kayj, by saying.
I thought you were my friend. No.
You said, "quote I'm not tracking things in the world." She isn't talking about what I'm.
I just enjoyed it. I live for stuff like this. I enjoy the heck out of stuff like this. I don't like screaming matches. I like more intelligent
dichotomy.
Back and forth.
Faculties that are designed to track these things. But then
say
I
feel
that
like
the inference from that to the evolutionary debunking argument works. That's just false.
All right, Brooke, you have a question?
And I think
Yeah, I had a question. So the first question was to T-Rock. I was going to ask,
you didn't articulate
why
in the first
would
speech
the
during
disciples not
cross-ex was really
recognizing
sneaky
Jesus
and very
be
bad.
and
I think you
like a
need to do
pinnacle
more to
argument for
explain
you?
it. Like,
Well,
one, you need
because
to
one of the
explain
things that
why
that might point
conceptual
to
role semantics
is
gets you
the
stance
notion that
independence.
Jesus,
Why it
it wasn't
distinguishes
actually
you from
Jesus. It
quasi-realism
was an
views, which
impersonator
Mob
of Jesus.
kind of mentioned it
Well,
at the
and,
end,
like,
which
it kind
you
of begs the
mentioned
question,
earlier.
like,
Seems
if
like
they
your
spent
view
all this
collapses
time with
into.
Jesus,
You also
like,
need
they
to
were his
explain more
disciples,
how,
and also we're talking
knowing
about
the meaning of
Mary,
the terms,
the
which are
Marys,
fixed
the
by
two
their inferential
Marys.
roles,
They
that
spent a
allows
lot
you
of
to
time with
know
Jesus. Why would
what
they
the
not
pure moral
recognize him?
truths are, or even
So
what
is
the
that
mixed
not
moral truths
assuming that the
are.
Gospels are
You didn't give any
reliable as
account of
opposed to
that, so
Paul's
I mean,
letter to the Corinthians church,
I don't
which
think it
would
goes either
be
way, because also Mob
vastly
was
more
not
reliable than the Gospels?
engaging with it well.
I didn't quite
Then let's see.
understand the
Then there was
question.
just kind of this
Isn't that
brief
assuming that the Gospels
exchange.
are
So
reliable?
you just completely
I don't
failed
think the
at giving a
Gospels are
companion to
reliable,
your
but that's my
argument, and
opinion.
then
Right. So
Mob
then
brought
my
up
question would be then why would you think that that would be a good
appraiser
argument
relativism.
to
I mean,
use the
I think he
gospel
got you
narrative
there. I don't
saying
think you
that they
did
didn't recognize
anything
Jesus
in
as a
reply. I think
refutation?
there are things you can do in reply, like
Because
you can give
most of
really
the
simple
evidence for the resurrection is in the
reductios. I mean, he'll
Gospels.
try and explain them away, but you should just
Well,
go
I'm
back
pretty
and
sure
forth on that
Hierophant
point.
brought up the First Corinthians Creed,
Then
which, by the
Mob
way,
did some
Jeff
type of
just came
questioning,
That's
up.
which
true.
was like,
Yeah,
if
he
Now I
brought
know
that
what
or
he
up.
was
if
talking
naturalism
about
was
there. He
true,
said I
would
think Jeff
rape
thinks the
still be
First
wrong?
Corinthians Creed is
I
the
mean, you
letter to
can
the
say
Corinthians
yes.
church. That creed comes. That's an oral tradition that was
Wait, can you still
preserved
hear
by
me?
Paul.
Sorry,
I
I
just
cut
want to say
out.
that. That's not to T-Rock, but
Don't worry, you're breaking my
yeah,
You
shoulder.
could
that's all I had to
you
say.
could still say yes. Like
Yeah,
you
that's
need
a
him
good
to
point. I
explain
wasn't
what
prepared to
naturalism
debate the
means.
Corinthian
On
Creed.
certain articulations of
Yeah, I just
realism,
wasn't
it's consistent
prepared to
with
debate that
naturalism,
point.
at
So
least as a
it's not
metaphysical
something I
thesis,
had
and
the
saying there are
forethought
these
of even thinking about a whole
non-metaphysical
lot of
entities.
creeds. But to
But I
me,
mean,
like,
even if you articulate it
I
as a
mean, I'm just
broader
speaking on my
one,
own
I
personal,
mean, you
like,
said
it
yes,
doesn't
and
really
then
move the
Mob just
needle for
didn't
me in
push you
terms
on
of
it at all.
belief. It doesn't,
He
I
should have
don't go
said that
and
that
say,
kind of counts
oh
against your
man,
view.
look at this
Um,
creed. Oh
and
yeah, I
then
believe in a
he
resurrection
asked
now.
you if you
Like,
found out baby
what?
torture
Like, I don't know how
was,
you get there,
stance
but I
independently
guess I know
good,
there's
would
people
you
of
do
faith
it?
that
And you
believe
said
that, and
no.
that somehow
And then he
lends
said,
credit.
why
But
if
they
it's
kind
good?
of
And you
already
said, I don't
believed the
want to,
resurrection
but
to
I'd be
begin with.
wrong.
It just
And
kind
then
of
he said, so these
reinforces
reasons aren't
their
motivating. I
already
get what you
their
were doing, Mob,
preconception
but I
about the
think you kind
resurrection.
of you
Okay,
went for it
fair
the
enough.
wrong
That's
way.
all I
I
have to
mean,
say.
one, you should have just made the
Yeah,
moral
thanks. I
argument, which is
appreciate
what I
that.
think you're
That's a
kind of
good
getting
point you
at.
made.
Just
Yeah.
a fourth independent argument. Two, you should have
Fun.
articulated
This
it
is
not in
fun.
terms of what he would do, but whether or not it would be
I
right
will
or
say you can
wrong,
get a lot of
and then
mileage out
stress
of
the
the
absurdity
literary
of
device
it still being
explanation.
it being
Like,
wrong.
that's a
So I
pretty common
think Cage
trope
actually responded
that
to
the
it
followers don't
as best as he
recognize
possibly
the
could, given the
risen
framing. I mean, you
being.
should have pressed him more. Then you asked him what does goodness mean, and he invoked conceptual
Are
role
you talking about
semantics.
my
That
argument
doesn't
about
answer the
it being a
question.
literary invention?
You should have.
Right,
I mean,
right.
Cage, you should have
you
said
can explain a
what
ton
the
of stuff
conceptual
with
role or the
literary
inferential role
invention,
the
just like you
term
can
good
explain a lot of stuff with,
plays.
well, God
And he
wanted
didn't
it
do
that
that.
way.
And Bob, you should have pointed
Right.
that out. And then,
Slurms, you have a question?
what was the last thing he said?
I
Oh,
had
then
a
you brought up
question for
gastronomic
both
realism.
debaters.
You also, Mob,
I
you should have
just there's
also
so much
articulated this as maybe a
negativity in the
fifth
world right
argument.
now.
You should have had all this written
It's
out
just so
as arguments and
upsetting.
not just
I
like
just wanted to
put
ask
them
you
forward
both
in
a question.
passing. And then,
Could I
Cage, you
get
said,
each of the
I get
debaters to
around
say something
the
nice about
gastronomic
the
realism
other
charge
one?
through, quote, my Minogian
I
semantics.
think I
But
did.
Minogian semantics, at least as
I don't
I
think I
developed
said
them, are
anything bad about
referential,
him to
not
begin with.
conceptual role semantics.
We kind of
So I
did.
have
I
no
mean,
clue
but
what you're
I
trying to
just mean
articulate how you
there's
get
so much
around it. And
negativity in the
even if you
world
took
right
on
now. There's
conceptual
so
role
much
semantics,
division
which you say you
and
do,
anger and
you need to
hatred in our.
explain
And I
okay.
just
like either why we shouldn't
I'll
take
say
on
this
conceptual
about
role
Hierophant.
semantics for
He did a very,
gastronomic terms
especially like on his
or
opening
other
and
related
closing. He was
terms,
very
but
well
we should for
prepared.
moral
He
terms. We didn't do
delivered
that.
things was very
So even if you said
articulate,
my conceptual
and
semantics,
he was very well prepared.
That tells us
And
nothing.
in fact, I'll just
So you
concede.
both did
I think he was
bad.
a lot more
I'm
prepared
not
than I
voting
was.
for either of you because it doesn't matter who I vote for, and I actually just don't.
And I tried a lot
No,
of
you
my
gotta
points were like
vote.
improvised, but I try to do the best I can.
What?
But
You gotta vote.
I mean, I work a
Come on.
full time
I'm not
job, so
voting.
it's,
It's
I did the best I can.
You have to.
No, I'm not doing
All
it.
right. We're just looking for
It doesn't
either
matter.
Proceed
Ty?
or Logic Troll to
Well, no,
answer me
because it's already
on whether or not he
2-0,
wants to
so no matter which
postpone
way
his
I vote.
debate so that
I
we
mean,
can put Mark and Proceed's
so
debate up
bad.
next.
Like,
I'm just waiting on
I
Proceed
don't
if
know
he
what to
wants
do
to come.
because Kayj.
I mean, I shared the live with him.
2 of your 3 arguments.
I don't know if he's here. Placide, are you here?
But you don't pursue them. And then the one argument you pursue, he gives, I think, a technically successful response.
Placide is not here
but
yet.
he doesn't articulate it, and he doesn't do it in
and
a
neither is
speech.
Logic Troll. So we're waiting on one of them so that we can continue.
I have no idea how to weigh.
I didn't do it without confirmation, Kayj. I'm
like,
asking Logic Troll.
What do you want me to do? Like, you didn't. Neither of you did your job.
So let me get this
deserved to
fucking
win the
straight.
round.
Let me understand this here, because I'm having a hard time tracking.
That's a good question.
In response to content-related reasons, form the belief that we should move Kayj debate back an hour.
You know what, Mob,
but on those content-related reasons, they were vacuous because there was
so much more ground and so much more to do. So, you know what?
Yo,
Kayj,
Kayj, I'm asking Placide and I'm asking Logic Troll. Okay, Logic Troll, I'll honor your debate if Logic Troll says that he needs to debate now. I will honor it. Okay.
He just texted me.
He texted you. What did he say?
He said, "Good luck," because you know what his belief was. You know what his belief was in response to the reasons was that the debate was at 10. That fuck.
Yo, I didn't look. This was last minute. Mark just told me now that he had to go to work in an hour. This is not something that I do.
Off. I'm gonna be teacup in here soon, and I'm gonna call in and say I'll be late for your debate.
You better not fucking call. That is insane. This is a TikTok debate. I can't hear you. You got bills to pay. Like it's really hard to hear.
Well, if he wins the debate, then it'll count. Like he's making more money off of the debate.
Let's be so fucking for real. All right. I'm not gonna say it.
We can always debate realism right now.
Yeah, was what you said?
No, wait, hold on. No. This is not a debate between you two, okay? It's formatted and scheduled for Logic Troll to
let that
debate.
shit bust.
So, Mark, are you saying that you're willing to just keep your time, or you still have to debate now?
I'm willing to keep my time.
Yeah, because
I can go next. I don't care. I'm flexible.
They'd all be.
Okay, great.
Well, look, I have a preference that you don't call into work.
Or there's some. Also believe in the mixed.
Yeah, I do too. But it doesn't look like either of our blockers are here.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, we'll just wait. We'll wait. If Placide comes here first, or if Logic Troll comes here.
And the reason
it's like
7 p.m. for Logic. Why the reason I give the meta-semantic stuff at the beginning. Actually, it's 6:42 for me.
West Coast, right?
Because I thought if I put it on, the reason why I adopt that stuff after adopting all of your stuff, evidence. No, bitch. Yaya's attitudes towards Givens people. It seems to be that Givens people have no bearing on my behavior normatively at all. It seems to be that if I adopt all the partners,
I'm gonna head out of here, guys. Nice. Thank you for having me.
I'm left with thank you for
well done.
Lying is wrong as opposed to you
Great
should
job.
lie is wrong. My name's Mark. Sorry, lying. You should lie is true. Stupid. And I sat and I thought I'm like I know.
All right, we're just waiting on Placide or.
Probably why that semantics was built. But I was also trying to accommodate the intuition that moral truths exist. And I want to say they exist in a deflationary way. So how's the weather today, guys? Because evidently we don't have anything else. I spoke to a lot of people about it. Don.
No. We have
specifically, but
we're just waiting on either Placide or Logic Troll.
And while we're waiting on them, I just want to say to whichever one of you motherfuckers kicked me, I
a whole lot harder.
Yeah, this time you're just going to deny us.
Again, that's great.
Yeah, it was. No, I believe I should have given more. Fuck. Hi, Hagel. How are you?
What's good? I think both Evan and Detroit are here.
That's like saying Ronaldo Messi should be motivated by any number of his fans to
obviously went through.
Behavior
like I agree, it wasn't
otherwise
incredibly, but the responses were just so confused, right?
I mean, his responses are technically
and yes,
correct.
I'm equating you to.
Like if you go into sure. I think he gestures at what could be a response, but I feel like that doesn't count as giving a response to the argument, right?
Okay. I mean, I think it does. I mean, this is the
thing.
Why
does Jim think I'm the affirmative?
If Mob just leaves it inert, what am I supposed to do?
Well, I think when you adopt a sort of wacky view,
wait, is Placide here?
To explain
right? So
how this wacky
I mean, it's not really.
Flaccid just sounds too much like Flaccid.
This is me talking. It's not actually.
I guess maybe.
It seems as though that. I guess we'll just continue with the regular scheduling.
He's not articulating it right.
If Placide's not here, so
he's taking, I think, improperly.
We'll just wait on Logic Troll.
Semantics and then taking from people like Thomason and Karimi.
We're just waiting on Logic Troll. I want to see if Logic Troll wants.
But it's one that's
Mark is not calling into. Well, I'm not going to make Mark call into work because of my bombastious, fictitious attitudes towards being pushed back an hour. I don't fucking care.
It's not doing it. Aren't wacky, but like the
combination
view together is definitely kind of wacky.
Mark,
wacky thing, right?
Well, right. Mark and his response.
Okay, so Placide said he'll be here. He can be here.
Yeah,
I don't think
it just depends on whether or not Logic Troll.
Well, at some point, the issue
accepts the change, at some point, or if they want to do it now. So we'll see.
Even like the way he put it, I think was fine. Like I have it written down. He said like. Well,
okay, great.
I know the conceptual
so Logic Troll, do you want to push back your debate to be the next debate instead of now?
If that was said, I did not
or
hear
do you
that.
want to
I guess
debate
that
now?
I mean that is what
that is the
said.
response. Yeah,
the most,
and that's fine. But that's not.
Yeah,
enough.
Mark. Is Mark here?
Mom needs to do something.
Would it
like,
also got to honor
restructure
my
the
opponent
to concern
too.
Conceptual.
Yeah,
like, I don't see why
I asked both.
Dude, he's too nice. I can't do this to him, bro. I can't. This is not gonna work. I'm gonna feel
Placide said that he'll take the original time at 10:30.
You know, I know the conceptual roles.
So okay, you guys, we can start the debate with you guys then.
You know, that's that, right?
If Mark
it's gonna make him call into work. Oh, that's fucked up. This feels like my fucking project.
Hey! This is not. I
just don't think it's on Mob to
at 10:30. So.
Well, wait.
That just is what it is, you know.
It would have been nice if I could have fucking.
All right, so let me.
Yeah, I guess.
Great.
Are you saying it's not on Mob?
Huh?
Respond.
Who's trying for half an hour?
Yeah, you were. I saw that you were trying for half an hour.
Sort of.
Oh man.
No, this sounds way like it's.
But I'm glad that we got you.
Out of the sort of like jumbled mess.
Okay, great.
That was the rest of it.
All right, so we begin our next debate.
You have the debate.
It's gonna be the Hierophant versus Timothy
give a bunch of
Morat
responses, right?
On the proposition Jesus Christ resurrected.
I don't think it's on your opponent to.
The Hierophant will be taking the affirmative
and then respond to it.
And Timothy Morat will be taking the debate.
Giving more.
And since we start with the affirmative, Hierophant. We begin with your opener.
You're saying.
Can I just make a single observation?
Okay, go ahead.
I don't think Mob has the burden.
This is kind of funny because you have
confused response,
Tim
so like the
versus
sort of
atheist
kernel of
Tim.
truth.
Yeah, that is true. Yep. Our fan's name is Tim, so it's Tim versus Tim right now.
Confused.
Oh, cool.
But the response is not confused.
Okay.
Well, I agree that response is it, but if all that was
said, we're going to begin your opener, 7-minute opener.
I'm talking about all of the other
things. Start the timer
that
whenever you say your first word.
How it assumes this theory of
Good evening.
The theory of truth.
We are here tonight to ask
I
one
totally
question.
Forgot about that. Wait,
did the resurrection of Jesus actually happen? My opponent is not ignorant of Christianity. He studied at a Reformed seminary.
You know what?
He lived much of his life as a sincere Christian, and I honestly respect that.
And okay, wait,
but this debate is not about Calvinism. It is not about inerrancy.
This is a good point to make.
And it's not about denominational systems. It's about a single event at the center of history.
No, she doesn't.
The resurrection of Jesus Christ.
TMR restricted.
And so my case tonight rests on three pillars.
Not truth.
The first being history, the facts surrounding Jesus' death, and the disciples' testimony. The second being philosophy, the logic of God's existence, making the resurrection credible. And then third, existence, the coherence of Christianity itself, explained only by the resurrection. So let's start with history. Most scholars, be them Christian, atheist, or agnostic alike, agree on a core set of facts. Jesus of Nazareth was crucified and killed. His disciples sincerely believed they saw him alive afterward, and this belief ignited a movement that we call Christianity.
Dude, I bet Mob's sitting there so
Alternative explanations, they don't hold. Hallucinations are private and subjective, not shared in groups across different times and places. Legends take generations to develop, yet resurrection belief is embedded in the earliest Christian creed within just a few years of the crucifixion.
Yeah, well, it would have been nice.
Conspiracy cannot explain why the disciples willingly endured persecution and death for this claim. The simplest explanation, the ones that the disciples themselves gave, is the one that fits the evidence. God raised Jesus from the dead. But history alone isn't enough. Let's move to philosophy. If God exists as the necessary ground of being, then the resurrection is not an improbable violation of nature. It is the natural outworking of God's character.
I just want to say,
a miracle is
birthday,
improbable
Kayj.
only if there is no
I
God.
didn't know it was your birthday. Happy birthday.
But if God does
What a nice
exist,
present to get dressed down by
omnipotent,
somebody you
omniscient,
respect.
and life-giving, then resurrection is not just possible,
The reason I
it's
mashed your two
expected.
concepts together was because
And it is where
I had
divine
read
necessity
all of
and human
and I was waiting
contingency
for it in June,
intersect
and I,
in
got
history.
busy and completely forgot about it.
And finally,
so
existence.
Then I
Why
debate was
does
happening,
Christianity exist at
I know
all?
I haven't posted papers in June.
If
and then there was,
Jesus stayed
4
dead,
papers
there would be no
and I'm like, holy
Christianity.
fuck, I gotta
The
lock
disciples
in.
would go
So then I
home,
read
and another
all of
failed
that.
Messiah
you
would be
didn't mash
forgotten.
anything together. Like,
But if Jesus rose,
I just don't
then
even,
history itself
I
is
get
reordered
the
around
view in
him.
a way, but like
That is why the resurrection is not just
in a way, the view
historical
might
or
be
philosophical.
inconsistent.
It is existential.
Like, the truth
It explains the
stuff
persistence, the
and
power, and the hope of the
semantics
Christian
are
faith.
explicitly
Now, my
referentialist.
opponent may
So
say,
they
I know
deny
all of
conceptual
this.
role semantics.
I was a believer
And you're
once,
trying to get out
and
of
I
them,
respect
at least,
that testimony.
truth-making,
But sincerity in and in leaving Christianity does not erase history. It does not undo logic.
and then
It does not alter the structure of reality.
Whatever. The whole point of
Most people leave Christianity over inerrancy questions,
like how we talk
church
about
culture, or the problem of evil.
Moral mathematical entities,
and those are indeed real issues.
Rocks, trees, whatever.
But that is not tonight's debate.
But
tonight's debate is about one event, the resurrection.
Because we're not
and
saying
the evidence
about the
points to yes.
Of the terms.
So let me close.
In fact, we're saying that the
historical evidence is best explained by the resurrection. The philosophical framework of God's existence makes it credible, and the existential coherence of Christianity makes it enduring. History, philosophy, existence. The resurrection is not wishful thinking. It is the event that grounds faith, explains history, and reveals the God who's the source of all.
Nothingness,
Thank you.
nothingness, or however it's titled, I don't remember.
All right, thank you, Tim.
I'm like, okay,
So
this makes sense. And
opener.
I talked about it on TikTok. I'm like,
now T-Rock
okay,
will begin your
sense.
7-minute
okay, well, this is
7-minute
how
opener.
I'm using it to refer to this.
And we'll
Somebody
start your
said,
timer
well,
whenever
I think it was Liam that said, well, how do you know you're referring to this? I'm like, oh, well, this word picks out a concept.
So the question of whether or not Jesus resurrected from the dead is a historical question.
How I flesh out
I agree
concept
with
on
that
this
one.
view, and so I sort of just got.
But history is a study of what happened in the past. It's also a science that involves probability rather than absolute certainty.
Maybe I should.
I can tell you,
one of
for
those
example,
say,
with absolute certainty that 3 + 4 = 7. That's how math works.
But
math involves
It's not
certainty.
like you just didn't do
History
anything. It's like
doesn't. I can't tell you with absolute certainty
these two things together,
that Abraham Lincoln was an American president.
That's
There's always that possibility.
What you should do.
I could be wrong.
Is just turn.
It could, for example, be some type of elaborate hoax. However, I can, based upon all the available evidence for Lincoln, determine that Abraham Lincoln was probably an American president.
And maybe
the threshold of probability usually exists in the middle of the spectrum. So if I can cross that threshold of greater than 50% probability, then I can say such and such probably happened.
Yeah, see, remember when I said I'm terrified for the debate?
Also, if I have a set of probabilities and I compare them, I can pick out the most probable within that and say that this is the best explanation.
Utility.
For example, suppose we were to do this with the resurrection. Like, suppose I compare two possibilities. Number one, Jesus resurrected. And number two, Jesus was impersonated after the resurrection.
Are you asking me how do I link like what's even remotely the relevance
clearly,
between the two?
before we even examine any of the evidence, we can say that number two is far more probable than number one.
Oh, because I don't
think
that
one
they're
is an extraordinary claim.
And the type of account.
Jesus resurrected. And number one would also require an extraordinary amount of evidence.
In fact, you can be a truth maker maximalist and
however, number two, Jesus was impersonated, is much less of an extraordinary claim. The burden of proof is much lower. Has anyone ever seen an Elvis impersonator? Well, suppose I went to Vegas and saw someone on the street dressed up like Elvis.
No, the maker wouldn't be reduced.
You could just say the truth maker is a normative. I don't like
without knowing anything about them. Which is safer to assume?
You can still have
they are an Elvis impersonator, or they are the real Elvis risen from the dead. Which of those two is a rational assumption? Well, I think it's quite safe to say that we can assume.
Real quick, let me address Charsky.
They're an Elvis impersonator.
Who?
And notice in this example, I never mentioned having an absolute sense of certainty about them being an impersonator.
I was forced to vote. I don't want to vote, but I can't help it. Like what Mob has to do is point out that it's a butcher.
Okay,
like,
thank you for that.
Debate is a
closed
space.
like
I'm
openers.
not the one debating or.
And now the Hierophant gets 5 minutes.
Okay, so it's not
rebuttal time.
What?
Or cross-examination.
Mob is no. I'm saying in the debate.
And we'll begin your timer whenever you say your first word.
But I'm saying what Mob needs to do is in the debate point out those criticisms. I actually think
you
Mob
mentioned
gave a very salient
threshold of probability, and I'm just stating this because you just stated it in your opener. You would agree that historical reasoning rarely delivers absolute certainty.
You should have asked a question like, "How is this different from quasi-realism?"
I'm sorry, I had a little hard time hearing you. Could you repeat that?
I said you mentioned a threshold of probability. And so you would agree that historical reasoning rarely delivers absolute certainty.
Can I point out a fucking bridge?
Correct.
Can I point
so
out
historians typically evaluate what
far more
explanation best fits the evidence, correct?
Correct.
Well, there's a reason for that.
And so our discussion is about which explanation best fits evidence surrounding Jesus' death and disciples' claims.
Is doing than what Mob is doing.
The last part, could you repeat that? Something about the disciples?
Yeah, our discussion is about which explanation best fits the evidence surrounding Jesus' death and his disciples' claims.
Personally attached to their view and don't like seeing it butchered.
I didn't quite understand.
So that explains the
then my next question is: you suggested that the resurrection is extraordinary and compared it to an impersonator. Would you then agree that this implies a coordinated hoax?
Destroyer, do you have anything to say about?
No, I'm actually not trying to argue that there was an impersonator necessarily, but I'm trying to.
I would play my time. So. You're trying on probability, right? You're comparing two explanations.
Why did you even bring up the truth?
Which would actually infer a coordinated, impossible impersonation versus resurrection.
I swear to God.
Right?
I've had enough, bro. Let me live.
Again, reclaiming my time. Isn't it true that the resurrection is the simplest explanation that accounts for all the evidence?
Am I allowed to
empty tomb, appearances, rapid pre-formation, transformation of disciples?
Yes.
Am I allowed to rescind my vote?
Yes.
No. It's not.
Yes.
Okay.
Who are you listening to, me?
Why would you say
I
it's
see
not?
multiple people saying yes and no.
Well, because
No, that's it. Well, this guy's nothing.
I don't understand that point. So because something, I don't understand even the rationale, because something simple is the or the best.
Now we're silencing.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. So using this threshold of probability that you put forward, it seems that resurrection is more probable than impersonation.
I shouldn't have taken anything.
Absolutely
I should have taken
not.
anything from your view, right? I should have just said, well, it's probably not a
Okay,
good
I
idea.
guess. I don't understand how you're getting there.
J.K. Rowling.
Well, I used just in my example. I said if you don't know anything about the situation and you see an Elvis, what do you assume? You assume they're an impersonator.
Yeah, but that's a singular act. We have a creed within 3 to 5 years that admits a multitude of interactions with the resurrected Christ.
You invoked it.
And so you would have to have a cohort who are pushing this narrative
Parfit doesn't take on a conceptual semantic
of an impersonator. This makes it incredibly complex. This isn't just the claim of a single individual. This is a claim of a group of individuals.
Try to remember who.
One offered me to.
So I'm hard pressed. I'm hard pressed to see. I'm sorry, we're claiming my time. I'm hard pressed to see how this theory of impersonation provides a simpler explanation when indeed it becomes more complex the more you actually look at the state of the claim.
I
don't think there's anything complex about it in person.
You would have to have a conspiracy supporting the impersonator. And throughout history, show me one conspiracy that did not fall apart.
It makes you feel better. Sure.
I don't think it'd have to be a conspiracy. It wouldn't have to necessarily be that elaborate.
What is the role?
So who's the one person who's the supreme voice leading this resurrection claim?
People that don't understand
I don't know.
what's
All I'm doing is comparing.
don't make
I end my time.
in
Thank you.
the debate.
I'm pretty confident. I said that the role.
That wraps up
I thought I said the
first round of cross-examination for Hierophant.
The role of it is it's neither. It's
Tim,
we need to assess the debate based
when
on
you
the
say your
moves
first
the
word, we'll
debaters
start your
make.
timer.
When I do that, I mean,
Okay, so
there are
of
certain
the
things
3
Mob should
points
have
that
done more
Hierophant
often than
mentioned,
Kayj,
the first one was history.
But if the
And
role of the
as I
ballot
said
is
in
to
my
punish
opening statement, I
most
think we
confused person
actually
in the room,
agree
then
on
I
that.
probably wouldn't
We
change
both accept history.
But that's not what it
but
is.
it's a study of probabilities, and I don't know if Hierophant, do you accept that history is a
Mob,
study
how
of
do you feel
probabilities, not
after like
certainties?
2 minutes or like
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
25 seconds of
We're on the same
critique for
page on
you,
that one.
and then
I'm going to
17
skip over the
minutes of
philosophy
just hate
aspect
Kayj?
of it because that's
everything
just not
I get
something
it.
I was prepared to debate.
How do you feel?
17 minutes conservative, actually.
It just take it, you know,
I feel a little better.
metaphysics and all that. I'm
it's
just
like a
not
3
prepared
hours.
to get into all that.
Does it fucking matter?
Coherence of
When one
Christianity
of them
itself, I do
was
want to
A,
talk about
forced to
that a
vote,
little bit.
and B,
You know,
spent at least half an hour
do you
just
own
spent. My wife called me
gospel
and said, "I watched that
synopsis,
debate. This guy's
Hierophant?
really upset with you." And I'm
Bible
like,
study tool?
I'm like, no, don't worry. It's because I fucking butchered all of his
Gospel
work.
synopsis Bible study, like study Bible.
Next time I'm calling.
The
You know what?
closest I
Fuck
guess
you,
I
Evan.
would
I'm
say
calling
is to
Amy
that
in the
would I have a
morning,
copy of
and we're gonna
School's
publish together.
Reformational Study Bible. So I'm assuming that might be your.
Okay, so I'm going to if you could pause. I'm just kind of waiting on that.
Oh
Okay, so
can y'all please
it's eating up
debate
my
on this
time here,
topic?
but
I'll help you, Kayj.
so like the
that
gospel
because they're both
synopsis takes
vegan,
the 4 gospels,
Yes,
Matthew, Mark,
wait,
Luke, and John,
Kayj, I'll
and it
help
compares
you.
them
That
side
was
by
a
side.
beautiful
And if you look at the resurrection
I feel like you're
account,
just finding another opportunity to bully me.
every
What? I
2
would
lines
never
or
do
so,
that.
you find a
You would never
contradiction
do that.
and inconsistency,
Bullshit. Look at the
and
last
things
30
that are
minutes.
very
How good it
concerning.
does.
I'll give you an
giving
example
you,
of something.
I'm giving
Sure,
you past
inconsistencies are
criticisms of
expected,
what
though.
you're doing
This is-
wrong,
this is
so
my
you can
point.
change for the
Okay,
better.
so for example, with in Matthew, Matthew says that there were 2 women that visited the tomb, Mary Magdalene
that's
and
right. Well,
Mary
because I
Mother of
want
James.
to.
In Mark,
Oh, you're
it says
right.
He just wants to.
there
He
were
just wants
3
to fuck
women
up
that
Evan. It has nothing to
visited
do with
the
me.
tomb, Mary
sorry,
Magdalene,
Leo.
Salome, and the other Mary.
No,
So
I never
we
said
can
that.
harmonize
I'm
the
gonna help
Mary
you with
Magdalene, the other Mary
I don't
there,
need to be
but
mentioned
the
once in
Salome
that
is
debate.
just an added one. And then
All right,
on
I mean,
Luke,
if
we
you want to
have
be a judge
over
next
5
week,
women,
or if you want to help
No,
Kayj,
I won't prep him.
described there in the text.
I want to be a judge.
And then in
only if
John,
they're
there's
again
only
debating
1
meta
woman.
ethics,
So
'cause
in
then there's a
summary,
reason for me to
Matthew
be a
has
judge.
1 woman, Mark has 2.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Matthew has 2
Meta
women.
ethics are going to be
Mark has
prominent
3
in these
women.
things.
Luke has 5 women, and
debate
John
on meta
has
ethics,
1
I
woman.
do want to judge.
It's a
But
huge
otherwise,
Dude,
inconsistency.
he's giving Jim a free
You also
fucking ride to the farm.
I don't think that's an
Free
inconsistency.
fucking ride.
Okay, so we also see things in the resurrection accounts. For example, like in Matthew, Matthew is the only one of the 4 gospels that mentions a great earthquake, a severe earthquake. And why would the other 3 gospels fail to mention a severe earthquake? And we don't see anything in history, going back to your first point, that has any kind of historical record mentioning a severe earthquake.
Well, yeah, it could be whatever they want.
I don't understand what this has to do anything if we're arguing the probability of the
Tim, this is his time.
This is his time too? Okay.
No, your time. Sorry, his name is Tim too.
That was the
Hierophant.
That's the reason I answered the tournament. That's the whole reason.
But
okay, I mean,
but I could just go on and on. Like, was the stone rolled away when the women?
I'll put you guys in a group chat.
Like,
yeah, so
one
Divinity
gospel says
and
it
Joey
was,
are gonna,
and one gospel says it was
veganism.
rolled away when they got
Divinity
when
thinks
they
that it's
got
false,
there. It was in
that veganism
it was
is,
rolled away as they got
the
there.
humans ought to eat.
So
humans ought to be
there.
vegan. Divinity answered
where
false to that,
did the disciples
and
meet
Joey
Jesus
answered true to that
after the resurrection?
Someone put them up against
One says atop a mountain.
You're such a fucking
sadist.
sadist.
In Galilee. The other gospels say that they one said they met him on the road to Emmaus.
Honestly,
one says they met him inside of a home.
Certain objections,
so which is it?
Depending on how you frame
these
the
are
proposition,
all inconsistencies in the text.
It's easy to say that
one of them
humans ought not
talks
to
about
be vegan.
the Roman
if he
guards,
uses causal and efficacy objections,
like the Pharisees came up to them and said, "Hey, I think you should make up the story that you were sleeping on guard duty. That makes no sense at all. Because if we all know that a Roman caught sleeping on guard duty, the punishment for that would be like unalive.
Me for 45
So
minutes?
these are not coherent Christianity. I mean, this is not coherency. This is inconsistency, wild inconsistency of stories.
Yes,
and I mean, I know you didn't argue with the text. I find it ironic. Most of my argument was based on the text.
No. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's like your parents are like, we need to have a talk.
It is,
Okay,
dude.
that'll
It's like
conclude your time.
First of all, I don't know Eric that well. I'm not even sure if any of you know who the
Okay,
fuck I am.
on to the second round of rebuttals.
But imagine being put in a group chat.
We'll start your timer whenever you say your first
Yeah,
word.
we're gonna gank you after this. It's
I think it's interesting that you bring up like the number of women instead of asking the correct question. That in first century Judea, why would a woman be named as the first witness at all?
I do not take on the
and so being hung up on whether there was 1, 2, 5, 50 doesn't matter. The audacity of the claim is placing a woman there as the first witness in the first place. That is not expected, nor would it ever be, especially in the first century of law. But moving on, I do have some questions for you. You don't deny that if God exists, resurrection is possible, right?
If there is causal inefficacy, then it doesn't actually
That's a big if.
cause any more
if God
animals to die or whatever. And then it's within
your resurrection is possible
to eat
yeah.
I don't see
yeah, but you'd agree that denying God's existence is a separate claim from whether Jesus rose, correct?
Like reductio that with other scenarios.
Well, I mean, I think you can reductio his view in a billion ways.
I don't deny God's existence.
But
wait.
All right, that's fine.
You think the motivation stuff?
Moving on. So historically, right, we must judge the evidence on its own merit. It's not by ruling out miracles a priori. You agree?
I don't think you really said this.
I had a hard time hearing you. I apologize.
So, in the idea of like giving a judgment of the historicity of the claim, right? We judge the evidence on its own merits. We do not rule out things like miracles a priori. Would you agree?
No, I don't agree with that. Because miracles, you have to prove the miracle. So when you claim the miracle, you have to prove the miracle. The burden.
So if, again, I'm reclaiming my time. If you assume miracles can't happen, then you've already decided the outcome before looking at the evidence, right?
What is this debates tournament?
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer or not, but I'm not assuming that miracles didn't happen. What I'm saying is the burden of proof rests upon the person making the claim to prove the claim.
So there's this
we're claiming my time.
Right, it might be considered a sport.
But in your counters, your naturalistic explanations, they all have problems in and of themselves, don't they?
Never take from other people's views. No. Their own views
don't
matter. To
point a problem out.
Right. Again, you brought up this impersonator.
So isn't it like a subjective topic?
And it's ridiculous to believe that a single person meeting an impersonator somehow convinced, eventually over 2,000 years, 2 billion people to believe this story. So there would have to be, again, there would have to be some kind of conspiracy behind the impersonation, which increases the level of complexity and reduces its probability.
And when they rule in favor,
do you agree?
It's possibly necessary that
totally disagree.
Ridicule.
I don't know how you're getting there.
Minutes after with
okay, so you said it's ridiculous.
Linear and helpful critiques.
You're making me
I think it's ridiculous to assume that a resurrection.
I'm sorry.
Well, if God exists, resurrection is not an improbable thing. If God does not exist, sure.
You got to change your behavior.
Right?
I will. Don't worry. Next
but
time
moving on, right?
And when I am,
you know that Christianity exploded out of the first century, yes?
Man, I do that.
Out of the first century?
I missed most of the debate.
Were
you
not
actually able to use Evan's view successfully against mine?
No, just shut up!
I don't know what history you're looking at, but nevertheless, again, and these
how
to push my point, right?
Your view.
These first Christians claimed Jesus' resurrection was centered.
I just wanted to say happy birthday, Kayj.
He wasn't faithful to you, but now we're just
that is a
dead horse,
right? The resurrection of Jesus Christ has been, from the very beginning, the centerpiece
when it just turns
of Christian theology.
Rock Lee getting beaten the fuck out of by Gara,
possibly,
right? Like
that's
we've all watched
debatable.
that 1,000 times.
I'd like to see sourcing on that. Moving on.
I think what you
Isn't it true that this movement grew under persecution without military power or political backing
out of the part of the YouTube video for this.
Because if something grew under persecution.
Yes or no, please. Is it true that the movement grew under persecution without military power or political backing?
And the opening was just me yelling at
Well,
Haru
that's
for
false,
the dumb
unfortunately.
fucking shit that he said. It wasn't even related
If the
to
disciples,
debate.
moving
It was
on,
just me
had
yelling at
knowingly
Haru.
fabricated the resurrection through this impersonation that you're putting forth, aside from the complexity of conspiracy, what did they gain? Wealth, power, status? Did they gain anything?
Hey, thanks.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you, sir. Are you going to give me a gift and not prompt Evan to
I'll take your
ridicule me
silence. That's fine. Instead of facing, right? They faced prisons, beatings, unalivement, didn't they?
No, just don't prompt Evan to ridicule.
Oh my God!
Yes,
You have
I do
6,
agree with
7
that.
coins.
Right? So doesn't that suggest sincerity to them, at the minimum, and something real driving them at a maximum?
Who's the matchup in the next round? Have you decided?
Yeah, that's time.
Yeah, me and Jim.
Okay,
Aesthetic
thank you.
realism is true.
So we move on to the third and final cross-examination.
Has gotten the easy route every time.
So,
sorry, not third.
Thank you,
The second
Jason.
cross-examination was
Liam,
Tim. Go ahead,
how
Tim.
old are you, youngin? Liam, listen to Liam's.
You're saying that. And I
He
try
had
to
to
take
debate
notes, but
a
it's hard
guy,
to listen to you and take
this
notes.
Lehman
I have a
character.
hard time. And
He was
I
trying to
had a little
defend
bit of
that,
hard time hearing you.
moral
I
realism
apologize.
isn't possible without God.
But,
and then he got a bye in the second round.
So you started out with one point about the women witnesses.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Joey.
Yeah, come on. We got to change this bracket. We got to change this bracket.
He's the easiest of the three people left. I think Liam should get a tougher matchup.
Were included.
100%. Given you probably have the most rhetorical
as
prowess.
the first witnesses.
He's gonna get. But look, think about it, right? It's either that or Jim was gonna have an easy route.
A hardcore evidence that
Kayj
resurrection.
Yeah. Kayj
I have a hard time believing that. I mean,
I hate to admit this, but from a historical perspective, women
What
were
did you debate in
unimportant.
round one? I forget.
That women were not considered credible witnesses. But if you were writing a story,
I think Jim and Liam
you can write a story about whatever you want. It can defy social norms.
I think Jim and Kayj. The whole reason I did this tournament
I don't find
was
that
to get
to be
the
a strong
aesthetic realism
point.
prompt with Jim. That was the whole point.
Now you said it's ridiculous to assume an impersonator
You're
was
both
the
getting
best
a talking to
explanation.
from Eric.
Now I'm not saying that I believe. I want to be real clear. I'm not saying that I believe the impersonator is real. I'm also not saying that it's the best theory.
You too, Mob.
All I am saying is that it is far better than the resurrection explanation.
Says that humans are
And it makes a lot more sense.
Joey says what?
And it's a lot more plausible. It's a lot more rational.
I just started
And
learning
it
stuff
fits
like 2 weeks ago.
reality. Like as we have
thank you for
observed
letting me
reality.
judge. It was,
Like we can't really observe someone scientifically.
I hope you all have a good weekend.
Rising from the dead.
Thank you for
and I mean,
yeah. Okay,
people
Mob
talk about
and
empty
Kayj,
tombs and things like that. You can go over to Israel today and visit the 3 different empty tombs of Jesus that they claim are Jesus. I mean,
I do
Israel's
think Mob's sort of
basically a fancy tourist trap,
ran
like with a lot of
I think
crazy relics over there where they
obviously
make
there's
all
stuff I'm
kinds
missing
of
everyone
extraordinary claims about
and obviously
fake
Christian
history.
Evan,
So,
smarter than me. I
and
don't know
then
about
your
this
last
golf,
point,
though, but the
you were
other two
talking
are
about
definitely smarter
how
than me, so.
Christianity grew under persecution without military power. I think that Christianity, and I could be wrong on this point, you might actually have me on this point, but
I did help Mob a bit.
to my knowledge, Christianity was not like exploding.
Sounds like you helped him lose
directly after the time like that Jesus died.
He asked me a question in this book.
You know, it kind of simmered. It did grow some, but I don't think it just
what is
the
John
doors
want?
off.
I mean, he was just
for
up
the
here.
first
Who needs to hear from
until
John
about 300 something during Constantine. When Constantine actually made Christianity the state religion of Rome, and that is what juiced up Christianity and made it into
Kayj in a situation where
one of the largest religions of all time, if not the
so we're going to
largest
get a
religion
veganism
of all time.
debate and an aesthetic realism debate.
And you said it's without military power. So my argument with that is Rome not without military
There's
power.
a chance that Jim wins.
But I guess we have a different perspective on that.
Isn't Kayj
You're welcome to respond to that. I've got a little bit of time left.
This is within the first century of the growth of Christianity, which, like, in reality, even if we look at Paul is a man who was so offended by this growing movement,
for fuck's sakes, I mean,
counter to rabbinic Judaism, that he traveled from modern Turkey
this just isn't fair.
to Jerusalem to arrest Christians.
Yeah. Wow.
This is not some like localized thing. Paul himself was not from Jerusalem.
He said the only point he came
He was from Tarsus.
Was to challenge Jim.
So, and we see this in his letters to Corinth, dated as early as the 50s, where we first are given the Corinthian Creed. So this isn't something that is small. This is something that is transforming like nation states.
Same with Jim.
So, but Paul
they
never
want each
witnessed
other.
the resurrection.
Wait, let me pause the time real quick so you can understand. Tim, this is your time. You do whatever you want with your time. So you could always
homosexual. Paul didn't ever witness the resurrection. In fact, he never actually met Jesus. He had a vision of Jesus on the road to Damascus.
And it was affirmed when he met with Peter and James 3 years later and was given the creed.
Okay, so AR, I have a question.
And then within 12 to 15 years, repeated the creed in his first letter to the Corinthians.
But it's just a creed, man. It's just something they came up with.
This is a statement of belief.
Yes, it is.
I agree.
But this is the center point of the entire faith.
And then
if it's false, it's
as the judge.
Debatable. That's debatable.
Comparatively,
and that concludes the second round of the
for like a
rebuttals.
little over a year.
All right, on to the third round of the rebuttals.
I think did fine as
Tim, we'll start your timer whenever you say your first word.
I would like to.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You guys are both Tim.
I've never gone by Tim.
Do you think he?
Rock? Okay, I'll call you Rock, and I'll call him Hierophant. I'll make sure not to say Tim.
Well, it might be perhaps friction.
So my opponent, as you can see, and I actually agree on a couple points.
doesn't know much
Jesus existed. He was crucified. His disciples sincerely believe he rose. The disagreement is over what best explains those facts.
I think they
I argue the resurrection is the most coherent explanation when judged historically, philosophically, and existentially. On history, the naturalistic theories collapsed under scrutiny. Again, hallucinations. Psychologists agree group hallucinations are possible. No appearances to individuals and groups. Just like Paul and James.
He might be.
Statements like there were over 500 at once. No parallel exists.
Things that were said were
conspiracy, which goes into the impersonation thing. The disciples gave no wealth and no power in the first century of the church's growth. Only persecution and death.
But not everything.
And guess what? Liars make bad martyrs.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
We could try to go with the legend, but the earliest creed in 1 Corinthians is dated to within 3 to 5 years of the crucifixion. And legends take generations, not months. So even skeptical scholars admit that the disciples had real experiences they believed of the risen Jesus. The question is, what explains them?
The same conclusion on each
My opponent wants to give some possible explanation.
That's something to say. I mean, I'm just saying.
But that's not really a historical argument. It's just a philosophical presupposition.
How they got there.
Because if God exists, resurrection is possible.
They seem to agree on the conclusion.
To say it's not impossible, is not evidence. It's bias. History demands we look at the evidence first and then ask what best explains it. Naturalistic theories break down. The resurrection uniquely explains things like the empty tomb, the transformation of the disciples from fishermen fearful for their lives into men who are willing to go into death to proclaim this.
Same day, same time.
And the rise of Christianity. It's missing simply because it involves God or some other thing. Stacking the deck, deciding the outcome even before hearing the evidence. And that's not skepticism, that's dogmatism. And finally, existence, the resurrection is not about just ancient data. It's about world-shaping reality. Christianity erupted from a defeated, scattered band of peasants into one of the most transformative movements in history, all centered on one single claim.
I clicked it, but it doesn't show me anything.
Well, maybe they were
billions today testify to encountering the risen Christ, and the transformation is existentially undeniable. A movement this massive doesn't just spring from hallucination, myth, or fraud. It points to something real,
it definitely says
something true,
What's up, Don?
and something living. So we're left with this. The history points to something extraordinary.
No, I wouldn't say that.
The philosophy says we can't rule it out unless we're already closed-minded. And the existence of the church shows the power of that reality still at work. The resurrection is not just the best explanation. It's the only explanation that does justice to all three.
What a coincidence.
1 in 365
Exceed my time.
chance of being right, and I got there.
Wait, Don, get out of that box.
That will
Maybe if I
conclude
go in there, it'll be my birthday.
Well, what about February?
the third round for
That
Hierophant.
was
Now,
pretty good. So you should try gambling.
T-Rock, you
Well,
get
February
5 minutes
29th,
of rebuttal. This is your
it's like a
last
free day. It's like a free
rebuttal
day, so
time.
I would have won either
And
way.
you begin whenever you say your first
Sir,
name.
guess mine. Try and do mine.
Yeah, you ended on something that
Just guess your exact
So you
birthday.
said it was like the only explanation. I
I'm
think
gonna guess
that's
it's kind of far
That's
away.
maybe
but
the
not too
most
far.
ridiculous thing that you've actually said this
Be
whole
within a
debate.
week.
Like, it's not the only explanation.
My intuition's telling me it's kind of far away, but not too far.
One of the worst. I don't know if it's the worst.
I'm gonna
explanation,
guess,
but it's
March
one of
13th.
the worst explanations
I'm gonna guess.
that
hold
has
on,
the
it's
least
my turn.
amount of evidence.
Okay.
And we do agree
I'm
that
gonna
you
guess,
you follow the evidence wherever it leads. I think we could be
April
on the same page on that point.
Yeah.
But
Not even fucking
you
close.
mentioned hallucinations. I mean,
Well,
that's
sure.
not my argument.
You're not
actually, I
fucking
never
close.
mentioned hallucinations. So that's kind of a straw man.
When's your
and I was
birthday?
kind of surprised that you
January.
went into that.
January
You
1.
know, myth and legend have to develop over time. Well,
Right
how
around
long
MLK
did
Day.
it take
it's my
Stan
birthday.
Lee to write Marvel comic books?
October 2nd.
You could write
My birthday's
stories
literally
in a shorter, much
front of your
shorter
face
period
always.
of time, and you can also harmonize those stories and
November
edit them
something,
and things
I
like
can't
that
remember what it
over
is.
a much shorter length of time. You
November
don't need
13th.
hundreds of years
It must
to
be
do
your
that.
username.
It's not. And
AR13.
one thing that I'll just throw out a possible explanation for the resurrection.
Very close. Very
Maybe
close.
it's just a literary
December is always in
invention
front of mine.
to
Hey, Jeff, the truth
align
thinks
with
that
some things,
the judges did a
fulfill
bad job
prophecies of the Old
judging him
Testament or
based
something
on
like that, like to create this Messiah thing.
the same
And
guy
to
who
then
joined the.
He wrote a
credence
book though.
to
That's the
Jesus'
same guy who joined the first round of
messiahship or
debates
something.
and went,
I don't
care about the money. I'm just going to win.
You know,
this."
you said in
Who
your
said that?
last rebuttal that the disciples
Christianity is an evil
experienced it.
cult of
The
manipulative
disciples
lies.
experienced it. Okay, quick question, yes or no? Were the Gospels written by eyewitnesses, the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
Get there.
We don't know.
And the Jews aren't real.
Oh, yeah, we do.
That was
They were
wild.
not written by
Did he actually say that?
and I don't
No,
know
he didn't say it like
anybody
that. He
who's a
didn't say
scholar that's making the
said
argument
that
that
they
they
said
were
that
indeed
everyone
written by
chooses to be
eyewitnesses. And I'll give you an
That's
example. And also,
there isn't
like
enough
a lot of people who are listeners,
He's saying that you can
you
change.
know,
That
they
because
think who wrote
nobody
Matthew,
can
Mark,
track
Luke, and
their-
John.
their
A lot of people
lineage back
think
to
Matthew,
Jacob.
Mark, Luke, and John.
But then-
But those
I
are
don't
church
understand what that
attributions.
means.
So
But then I got
we actually
into-
don't know who
then
wrote
I pointed
Matthew,
out
Mark, Luke,
how
and John,
Christianity is
but we
different
do
than
know
Judaism.
a few things about it.
Because Christianity kind
We
of
know
popped
that
up all
Mark
over the
was
place, where
probably
Judaism
the
was like one
oldest
group of
one.
people. They came from like
and
one
that
location.
John was the youngest
They,
one.
like
And,
share the same bloodline, right?
You know,
And it's
Bart
like,
Ehrman makes a great
well,
argument
Christianity
about.
counts as an ethnicity too.
I might be a
because they
little bit
share
off the
culture.
topic, but Jesus being God, you know, like John is the
Isn't
one
that
that
the bone
leans the
myth
most
system?
into that
Yeah.
theology that Jesus was God. And
Fucking hilarious.
but you know,
He's a coon. He's
the
a loon.
Bibles have undergone a lot of revision and
I mean,
editing over the years.
they're
And
like
I think a lot of
mythicists are
people
like
aren't
astrologers too,
aware
like
of those type
astronomers,
of
you know
things.
what I mean?
And
Like, they're like
I mean, it
astrologers.
could the resurrection. I mean,
Well,
you could have
not
some
all- not all of
historical
them. There are- I
facts
think there
about
are
Jesus
mythicist models
buried into the
that can work,
Gospels.
like Carrier said they could.
You
I
know,
just think
like
Carrier
for
has
example,
rather bad
maybe the
hermeneutics.
Sermon on the Mount actually happened.
I don't think any mythicist
Maybe
position is
Jesus,
tenable.
being a carpenter's
Well, do
son,
you know what Carrier's model
actually
is?
was the case.
It doesn't matter. Like, I
Maybe
just go with the
Jesus
mainstream
was
historical
born in
model.
Bethlehem. We don't know. Some of these facts
is it like a
about
legendary?
Jesus
Is a legendary
are
legendary
plausible.
figure
They're
hypothesis?
really
is that
not.
mythicist or no?
They're not
Like
that really
that
that
Jesus was
far
a real
fetched, and you
person,
won't
legends
actually
developed
find
from him?
scholars.
Well,
I
like
mean, they'll debate them
I
somewhat,
would
but
say
not
there
as
could
much
have
as
been
the
a real person
resurrection,
or
because the
people
resurrection is
that were all formed
is a
into
pretty
one.
hard
You know,
thing
legends
to
about.
That sounds like
Yeah,
you
that's
being
replicate.
That
You
sounds like
can't
you
do
being
it, and you can't
I
observe
am
someone
agnostic.
being resurrected.
No,
I don't even
yeah.
know how that would, from a scientific point, happen
what's
with
it
the
called?
cells in your
You realize
body,
that
like
all-
once
like
they've
a lot of the
undergone
historical
death,
models disagree with each
like
other, right?
unalivement. Like, how do they just come back to life?
which
from a-
one? I'm
from
talking
a-
about the
From
mainstream.
a biological standpoint and a physics
Well, I don't know what
standpoint.
you mean. I don't know what you mean by mainstream.
One of the things that I do
Yeah,
is
so
magic.
the
I do
mainstream
coin vanishes
historical
and things like
position
that.
on Jesus
it's a lot more likely that there's some type of magic
disagreements
trick.
over that. There's disagreements over
if it's not a literary,
like what attributes
that would be more likely that was just the elaborate magic trick.
No, not
I mean,
over that.
there is evidence that Jesus did perform magic in the Bible.
Did he exist?
For example, turning the water into wine. That's something
there's different models,
you know I could do with a pack of Kool-Aid.
Conclusion, and they disagree about different things.
And maybe a little bit of vodka.
Yeah, so they might disagree about superficial things, but fundamentally they all agree that it existed, and there's some minimal facts.
There's plenty of other explanations other than,
for example, like Carrier's model isn't really that far
completely
from
irrational.
Like, you know, John Dominic
more
Crossan or
likely
somebody
than
like that, right?
the resurrection.
But John Dominic Crossan, thinks
Jesus had a pack of Kool-Aid.
or maybe a better example would be that guy that thinks that the Odyssey
And that's time.
Mark. I can't think of his name right now.
And now
But
we
like,
go
Carrier's
to our
model wouldn't
open
actually be that far from
closers.
his. But
Hierophant,
Carrier's a mythicism, and
you get 3 minutes.
Right, so
what's
like
that
when you say they all agree he existed, yeah, but
tonight we have examined one
largely don't agree with each other.
Did Jesus rise from the dead?
I guess I don't.
We agree on some historical facts.
Well, like the guy
Jesus
talked about
existed.
the
He was
Odyssey
crucified.
guy.
His disciples sincerely believed he appeared alive after his death.
Jesus Christ! I couldn't.
The question is,
him and Richard Miller have a
best
model that's
explains these facts.
They like all the stories.
My opponent has framed the resurrection as extraordinary,
like
suggesting
Old Testament, like
some impersonation or some other
from the
conspiratory,
and that Mark was largely influenced by that stuff, and then the Gospel writers basically.
But I want you to think
I'll
carefully.
make that mythicist position.
Impersonation or anything else
the mainstream
would require hundreds of people coordinating fraud, producing hundreds of witnesses,
That's the Jesus I'm
and
saying,
then,
the main
after all of that, be willing to give their lives for this lie.
Conjure up legends and myths.
I'm sorry, but that is far less plausible than the resurrection itself. Remember our 3 pillars. History,
kind of like facts about Jesus
early creeds within years of the crucifixion.
Each year.
As much as I don't like to mention it, even the Jewish polemic presupposes that Jesus was indeed crucified and was buried.
The John the Baptist movement was attached.
Eyewitness appearances, all documented by multiple sources.
Right.
Even though the authorship of those texts are attested, there would be no actual motivation under the historical methodology they use, but nevertheless. Be it any naturalistic explanation. It wasn't a straw man, it was just pointing towards your naturalistic explanations, hallucinations, legends, or conspiracies. Cannot explain the totality of these facts.
That person's
philosophy, our second pillar, means the probability does not require certainty. We both agree on this.
Yeah, because now
using the threshold of probability, my opponent cited resurrection is indeed the best explanation for all the historical data. It accounts for the evidence where naturalistic explanations fail.
John the Baptist baptized Jesus.
And then third, existence, the transformation of the disciples, the birth of the Christian movement, and the ongoing impact of Christ's resurrection across 2 millennia show that something real and world-changing occurred.
Who won? I mean, what's your position?
Hallucination, or myth, regardless, cannot account for this. So we're left with a clear conclusion. The resurrection is not only historically plausible,
but then he got shit on
it
by
is
the judges
philosophically reasonable and existentially transformative. It's the best explanation for facts. The resurrection is not a story we wish were true. It's an event that history, reason, and reality point to. Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and that changes everything. Thank you.
That is time.
I'm
Perfect.
okay with your position.
All right, and Rock, you get your 3 minutes.
No,
whenever
well,
you say
I'm
your
just
first
saying,
word.
like, I just think we should differentiate between, like, the Carrier thesis.
Rock,
and
you're
then, like,
you're muted.
thesis of,
Hold
like,
on.
some mythicists here on TikTok.
You could
say
unmute.
stuff like
I invited
there's no
There
first-hand
you go.
sources about
All right.
Jesus. Like, those kind of arguments are just really, really dumb.
Oops, I'm getting that back.
Carrier
Sorry,
has,
it's
like,
probably
a
me.
fleshed-out model. You know, I'm just saying.
We should be
The
careful.
last
I get
line
what
of
you're
my
saying.
opponent's
Look, I would
argument
say
was,
Carrier
Jesus
has
Christ
done more
rose from the dead, and that changes
model than
everything.
any
Well, guess
person
what?
I've ever
That's
seen.
an
Have you ever
assertion.
come across this guy
And
called
the way burden of proof works,
Christ before
the
Jesus?
person
The
who
cowboy
makes the
hat.
assertion has the burden of proof to
Okay,
prove
like,
the assertion.
is it
I want
just
to be
me, or is
crystal
that just
clear.
like the most
I'm not
tinfoil
claiming that
hat
I know what happened with any sense of
theory
certainty.
that you've ever heard?
That's
Like, I've spoken to him a couple of
that's
times.
like the God of the gaps fallacy.
I've asked him this question before.
But
okay,
to claim
you
that
don't come
I
up
know
with this
something when I the God of the
style,
gaps
like
fallacy.
that's his whole thing, style
But to claim that I know something when I
you may not
don't know
know is
something, that's
Sir
a God
actually
of the gaps.
debated him on this topic.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I don't think. I don't see
Spiritual is a miracle
because
with
everybody knows about
no
Styler, right?
good, solid evidence to back it up,
the same conclusions that
and
him and his co-author
philosophically reasonable,
and whenever I ask him
or
about that, he
rational.
always
I
goes,
would
"Well,
add.
look, it's because this guy is
So
work for Christian
one thing I really like to talk
it's in their
about
best
with a
interest
lot of
to
people
uphold
is,
the
you know,
classic model, and that's the only
what
reason
is
they do it. It's
rationality?
oh,
Like
come
if I say that I have
it's a conspiracy
a pink.
theory.
What's kind of interesting is,
and that pink unicorn
so the
grants
conclusions
me
he gets from the
wishes whenever I
the
want.
stylometric analysis he does.
Do you?
There are
Is it rational to believe that
for different reasons,
or is it?
But
is
that
the
conclusion
default?
doesn't lead to a mythicist model. Like
that
conclusion at best.
Is it rational to believe that I have a
all
pink
the texts we
unicorn in
have
my
were
hand
highly influenced
that grants me wishes? No, it's not.
Which that's
now,
like the model
what if I
that,
started giving you more and more and more and more evidence to prove that? Then, what if I actually had a pink unicorn in my hand?
More new age
then I might actually be able to provide you
the text
a
we
sufficient
have
amount of evidence to prove that. But because there is no pink unicorn, and I sort of just made that up, it's kind of like the resurrection. There is a lack of evidence to support this extraordinary claim. And extraordinary claims always require an extraordinary amount of evidence to prove. And the burden of proof always rests upon the person making the
he says
assertion.
stuff like
So,
that I highly disagree with.
What is the default? If you don't know what something is, the default is always, the rational default in light of insufficient evidence is always
pseudepigraphia and forged text
I end
like
my
the
time.
Hadrian letter, which like we know is a forgery. And Hadrian talks about them
I'm done.
worshiping the Serapis Christ person, right? And we know that letter is a forgery, right? It's 4th century forgeries. And it's just stuff like that. Like it's like those kind of things. I don't know. Like if you just look into those claims, I don't know why that would motivate someone to accept the entire thesis.
Yeah, I'm done.
Clearly, it's just
you guys hear me?
They're bad.
Am I not heard?
Evidence to point to.
I can hear you.
Do you know
Okay, great.
Where
No, because for a second I thought you guys couldn't hear me. Okay,
I
great.
think he lost credibility.
All right, great.
To me when
All right.
we were talking
Just making
about
sure,
Pilate,
because people aren't okay. Okay,
and he made his whole
so
argument about how
yeah, that concludes the debate, and now the judges are going to give the
Pilate
critiques.
is referred to as
Starting with Flenser now. I guess it's Flenser's turn.
Right, and then I brought up the fact that Pilate.
Okay, yeah, this is a really good debate. I really appreciate
where it says he was the
everything that you brought to the table. Right? You'll both have
and
a good amount of historical
knowledge. The Bible was wrong.
Awareness of the arguments.
Wait, hold on. What if
and against?
The Bible?
I thought the Bible. My memory might be escaping me, but I think the Bible used the right.
Hierophant's opening was really quite good.
No, it's the other way around. So the Bible says precept, right? But the
historians can agree on
point that was found or extra biblical
how naturalistic explanations fail.
Say the procurator, right? But the simple explanation of that.
I know
Christianity be
I don't know about the
in and
Bible.
of itself.
Well, he did and he
didn't.
Right. The explanation is that by the time that Tacitus,
that resurrection best
whoever
explains
writes
all of
about
these disparate facts, especially given his claim
he's
that
using a title which at that time the governor of Judea was known by a different title. So if you're writing,
I thought it was good. You both kind of
emperors,
agreed on
you wouldn't
that it
use
was a historical question,
title.
probability,
You would
and not certainty. And you kind of reiterated
what
that.
people
Gave the
understood to
Lincoln
be the leader
example.
of the governor of Judea.
Said that
right?
to believe something,
It's
you
like
need to
the
move
example I gave
kind of
him was,
across this threshold,
the UK,
this
right?
1/2.
The prime minister.
You said exactly,
and
that
president equivalent.
what's needed is to compare varying hypotheses.
Now, that hasn't been the title for the prime minister throughout history.
So I think you all were really quite
early,
similar on the strength of the opening.
The title was
I think I'd have to give
Lord of the
it to Hierophant.
However, when
I
people
thought
write his
he was
history
just a
books
little
now,
more
they just say
clear in his
the prime
strategy of
minister,
how he wanted to
because
go and
that's what
establish the
people understand
resurrection.
now.
when we moved to the cross-examination,
the person
that was a
you're
little
referring to
frustrating for
wasn't the
me.
leader of the
I think
government at
Hierophant
that
would
time. It
ask
just
a
means
question and then
title. I'm
didn't
just
really
using
allow
the title
time
that people understand
to
now.
answer it.
Yeah,
I brought
seriously,
up
that
that
might be
point.
a like generic term.
Before
Yeah,
we
it's
got
like
to hear the
isn't
answer,
that what
so
like
it
an
seemed more like
interpolation is? Like you're writing to
a
your current
rhetorical
audience,
question.
right? Based on the understanding
at
that
best.
they
No,
will
that's
know
not
what
what
you
an
mean.
interpolation
And then
is.
for Tim's cross,
But what is
I
the
thought
device?
that was
Well, I think
that was good.
what
It was a good
like
initial
generally
cross
argue there is
examination. I thought y'all went really well back and
yeah,
forth.
that's his argument. But
Throughout
my argument is that it's not
totality of your
anachronistic. It is
crosses.
anachronistic.
I
but
think
it's an
there were very
explanation.
few issues that were brought
The
up
text
that
was
weren't
written
picked up,
after
that weren't
this person
addressed.
existed, and by the time it was written,
Women
the
being
title of the
reliable
governor of Judea
witnesses,
wasn't prefect; it was
the
procurator.
historicity of whether Christianity
So
grew explosively
Yeah,
from
maybe.
the
I
first
don't know a
century
lot
on.
about that. I mean,
I think
that
those
could be
are
the case.
those are good
Yeah,
debates.
and
good,
I gave him
good
the
things
prime
to
minister
hash out
example,
in the
and it
debate.
was like,
we all
well,
did.
you know, we know
I
that's
think
not
the
the case.
closings for both of
based on
y'all,
what?
for
And it's like,
Hierophant,
well, because we know that's not what happened.
did a
I'm
good
like,
job
well, all
of
right, now you're just
reiterating all the points that you wanted to make.
I think it depends on what model
I thought the one point that
being
I
engaged
felt
with, right?
wasn't
I mean,
nailed, or
like to me, it
was
doesn't
really
matter if the
brought
gospel
up,
writers have
was moving
anachronistic
from
terms in them
something
because
being possible
I
to
think the
something
gospels
being
were written
probable.
after the diaspora,
So
and I don't
if
think they
God
knew anybody that knew
exists, then
Jesus. So
miracles are possible.
they get a
I
lot
never
of
really
stuff,
heard a
I
strong
think,
case
wrong
for
about
why
the sort of
that
general
made
area
it probable.
and stuff
I
about
did
like
recognize
locations
that
and
you
shit. So
said, well, this
I wouldn't be
is gonna
surprised if they
explain
got titles
the
and stuff wrong
totality
too.
of
That wouldn't be surprising
the
to me.
evidence is that,
And I
we
don't
see
think
better than
I don't know what that would
these other
do
various
to the theory.
naturalistic hypotheses.
But if you're talking to
and then
like
Tim's close,
maybe someone that
I think
holds
also
it into like
reiterated
eyewitness accounts,
very well
like,
the core thesis,
like
which
the
was
historically recorded
extraordinary
or
things
whatever.
require extraordinary
It might
evidence.
do something.
I think you finally, at some point late in the debate, finally said, "Hey, look, I'm not making the claim that Jesus was the resurrection story came from some imposter story." Right, and I think for the majority of the debate, it sounded like that was what your favorite hypothesis was. So it's good to see, like you were saying,
No,
it's just
AR,
an
go to
example,
AR's line.
perhaps literary
AR.
invention that does all of that.
I don't know.
You know,
That was
AR
great to bring
underscore
up, like
11 underscore 13.
I thought a point that you could have
That's my
driven
at.
home better would be like, at several instances, you were questioning the reliability of the Gospels. I thought you could have done a better job of tying that into why that should make us doubt